that's cost them points, because that you can't get back.
Karun, to you.
Yeah, I think this Ferrari reliability thing is a big worry, Crofty, isn't it? Because we've seen it with Alfa Romeo, we've seen it, with obviously the works cars, and the body language coming out of Matteo Binotto in Baku was clear. He was talking about, we pushed the boundaries, we made big gains, etc., etc. But there wasn't a clear line about, we know the answer, we know the solution. The next power unit, number 4, 5, that's coming, will have the fix. It sounded still like they were in an investigative phase, which is a concern, right? We're not even halfway through the season, and Leclerc already in trouble.
I mean, the one crumb of comfort is that they've got until later in the season to lock in the ERS package. The internal combustion engine has been frozen and homologated now, and yes, you can fix it on reliability. You want to put a bit of performance in there as well.
Yeah, so they're a little bit limited, but they will definitely find their way. But it's really tricky for all of the manufacturers to be able to use the minimum amount of engines that they have. It's such a small amount for Formula One when you're pushing it to the limit every race weekend. I
do wonder, gentlemen, with 22 races a season, whether an extra unit might not be a bad idea, because if the engines are frozen, you're not spending a huge amount in developments to produce these engines. The unit cost is that much lower.
Yeah, and I'd be interested to see how many people actually don't take a penalty this year.
Yep.
I think it'll be pretty much everyone at some point will take a penalty, which then it makes it just a bit of a mockery, doesn't it? If everyone is taking a penalty. And the cars at the front, it's less, it hinders them less because they have the performance to come through the field and still get a reasonably good result.
So Lando Norris out there early this afternoon after losing time in the morning session. His teammate Daniel Ricciardo just gone third fastest. Ted Kravitz, down to you.
As if, down at Alfa Romeo Sauber, and as if in sympathy with his old team, Valtteri Bottas has decided that he too is going to have some overrunning engineering works on his car. And this one looks like to be an electronics issue, because they're dealing with the within the cockpit, and then with the light that shows whether there's been a accident worthy of the G meter, effectively, the medical warning light on the top of the chassis. They're sort of fiddling with that and reinstalling it. So I think there's been a quite strange and very localized electronic issue, which they obviously can't run without all these electronics being correct and ready. You can see by the fact that Valtteri's on the back of the garage with his full race suit and helmet all ready to go, that he's expected this to be quite a quick fix. Yeah, in any case, it's taking a bit
so we will need two burnouts.
What's going on with I cannot do burnouts.
It was because of the turbo.
Okay. If he can't do them, he probably won't be able to do two of them. But yeah, it's quite an interesting scene. Valtteri just on the workbench at the back with his partner Tiffany, who's wearing a very fetching Simpsons t-shirt, which don't know where she's got her Simpsons t-shirt.
We are all fans of the Simpsons, Ted.
The clouds outside are a bit like the opening titles of the Simpsons. The Simpsons.
She needs a big couch at the back of the garage. Cheers for that. It's not been good Fridays all season long for Valtteri Bottas. If it's not engines and sadly crashes, he has lost an awful lot of time. Verstappen is nearly 6/10 clear of Charles Leclerc. We are on track now with George Russell and Jenson Button.
Here we go through turn 1, not really a corner, braking for turn 2. It's a little bit bumpy under braking, easy to lock the fronts or even the rears. Don't overshoot turn 3 because it compromises your exit and you can't get on the power. A little bit of rear movement there. And then you're into turns 4, 3 and 4, which is really, really tricky, off-camber corners. Easy through turn 5, easy flat, 6 and 7. Got to get to that apex curve, which you couldn't quite do there because of understeer, and it compromises your exit and through turn 7. Down there, not quite straight, into turn 8 under the bridge, where you lose a little bit of grip. You've got to get over that apex curve, so the change of direction is good and carry a lot of speed through there. Difficult on the exit because the circuit does fall away and it tries to pull you into the wall. Down into the hairpin, which is turn 10. Not too difficult under braking. If you run a little deep, you can get the car turned and get a good exit. Seemed pretty good through there. A little bit loose on the rear. And now it's DRS open, full speed ahead, porpoising.
or bouncing?
Or
Which is it?
bouncing. Which one is it? From here you can't tell, but it actually didn't seem too bad. Pick your braking point. Very difficult here under braking with turbulent air, but also because of the porpoising. Run as much curb as you dare, and get as closest to the wall as you dare, or the Tech Pro wall, as it's called now.
The wall that once was and has now been replaced by Tech Pro barriers. And George Russell 13th fastest. Daniel Ricciardo behind him goes 9th fastest. Lance Stroll crosses the line in 10th, and Fernando Alonso is back up there in the top 3 once again, with Max Verstappen on board currently with the fastest time. And on this lap, quickest first sector and a very competitive middle sector too. Getting out of his way is Zhou Guanyu on what is his first visit to Montreal and his first race in the Canadian Grand Prix. Into that final chicane goes Max Verstappen, as smooth as you like through there. He really wasn't having to attack or push too much, but he still kept the speed, and he still goes a little bit faster. 1:14.7, we're into the 1:14s now as he slows down and heads past turn 2, and as he's there, I'm sure waving to him from the side of the track, Martin Brundle, good afternoon.
Hello, David. Hello, everybody. Yes, good little spot on the outside of 2. And what you'll see is that turn 1 is effectively a deceleration zone as they appear at incredible speed down the pit straight. And it's gone remarkably quiet since you've thrown to me, Crofty. But anyway, you'll see
Apologies for that, Martin.
the first car is actually very slow. There have been a lot of cars on track. So here we go. They steam into 1. And you can see the AlphaTauri in the background there. And that's going slowly as well. So we'll wait till something turns up, giving it full beans. Here we go with the McLaren, just turning up like it's Lando Norris. And then they're playing with the throttle. The Ferrari of Sainz was short shifting. Yes, does it again. Just pulls up an extra gear to dull the torque a little bit. Perez came through, and I can still smell the burnt Pirelli tyres when he came through the last time, locked up and went straight through the chicane. So we're seeing now, as Ricciardo turns up, a little bit of movement from the back of all of the cars as they make the direction change in here, and then just pick up the throttle. They've got so much mechanical grip through here. It's quite extraordinary, actually. Just listen at Charles Leclerc coming through here. Just puts the nose in, picks the throttle up. So both Ferraris needing to short shift there to get better traction. The Red Bull has got incredible rear grip, incredible traction coming out of this corner, as a very flighty Alpine in the hands of Esteban Ocon there. And this is Max Verstappen. He's absolutely centimetre perfect every time to it. He looks so confident in that Red Bull as Lando takes a little bit too much curb. So we got braking, we got turn in, we got direction change, and then we got traction through the exit, asking everything of a Formula One car through this very interesting first 3 corners.
Thanks ever so much, Martin. One of the best places to go and watch Formula One cars down there, Jensen. What was it like barreling into that first turn when you were driving?
It's, especially in qualifying, it's tricky because it's the first time, obviously, well, not the first time, but you're hammering into turn 1, and it's really difficult on the brakes to not lock an inside front. It's tricky. You try to get the tyres up to temperature, but there aren't many fast, high-speed corners here, so you've done most of it by hitting the brakes hard to put heat into those tyres. But tricky corner, if you run wide in turn 1, it compromises turn 2, puts you in a wrong position, and then you can't get the exit of turn 2 as you would like. So, yeah, a tough couple of corners, and then if you've done a bad job, you're fighting it through the rest of the lap trying to make the time up.
At Caroon, Lewis Hamilton weaving down the straight, trying to generate some heat in his tyres.
Bouncing and bottoming is first on FP1.
And the smooth operator still finding it a tad bumpy out there, Caroon.
Yeah, indeed. So let's take a look at Lewis's lap, Crofty. As you said, brand new set of the medium compound tyres, of course. His first time for FP2, heading up towards turns 3 and 4. Got to use lots of the inside curb here. But make sure you're comfortable with getting up close to the wall on the exit of 4. Comfortably flat through the right-hander, and now coming up to the first sector time. About 3/10 down. But the times are coming. They're constantly improving. This isn't a tyre where they're hitting the lap time on the first lap. Through 8 and 9, it's always a bit bumpy as you go underneath that bridge. Under braking there. and important to get a good, clean exit up towards the hairpin. Hamilton now heading down the straight, picking a braking point here. Always a little bit of a challenge. You see drivers using different lines. Think back. I remember Michael Schumacher always starting a bit wide. George Russell complaining. The other Mercedes of hopping through turn 9. Let's look at Lewis. The bouncing doesn't look too bad, I have to say. It doesn't. It looks like it's riding on the bumps of the track rather than porpoising. It has to be said. Pretty safe through the final chicane and the Wall of Champions, so that'll give him his first time on the board, P6 at the moment. But it does look like there's a lot more to come. That looked like a pretty safe first lap from Lewis.
As you would expect, given that they're a little bit behind the two Mercedes drivers and others out on the track because of that extra time spent in the garage before they came out in this session. And Jensen, you made a point of this when we were on board with Russell earlier. You've just seen it with Lewis off board too. It doesn't look like it's bouncing as much because, well, is that because there's less downforce attached to the car, therefore it's not working quite as efficiently and then shoving the car back up into the air so dramatically?
Yeah, it's difficult to know. I don't know if they've changed their downforce level, or I know they were playing around with floors, both running different floors this morning. Obviously they were delayed for this session, so they're making some big changes, and it seems to have helped them, which is great for them.
Karoon, to you.
Yeah, no, just looking back at in this pit garage, Crofty, and talking to those guys at Mercedes. As we see a replay here of Mick Schumacher. This is that bumpy braking zone thing into 8-9. A bit of a snapper, obviously, at the rear of the car. Not really with him there as he turned in. But I'm interested. You know, the lessons they've learned from Barcelona. I mean, look at the bouncing here from Carlos's head. The Mercedes definitely didn't have that, did it? You know, Carlos,
no.
We heard him on the radio saying it's worse than an FP1. He's a bit offline, I have to say, coming down the straight. But it looks terrible, the bouncing down the straight.
Bouncing is a really bad case. Okay, understood.
Yeah, it is.
It's not good. And into turn 13, 14 goes Carlos Sainz. Pierre Gasly's just gone through there and has just, might have transgressed the rules a little bit and failed to follow the race director's instructions, i.e. coming back onto the track to the left of the arrow and the bollard that's there. You've just seen Sebastian Vettel going on at turn 1. There's a lot of corners here. If you're not going to make it, you bail out because it's the easiest way to preserve those tyres for a bit. Ted, down to you.
Just down at Ferrari, Crofty, I've been getting my fellow pit lane dwellers' opinions on what's going on with Charles Leclerc and his turbo. And the thought is, maybe you've heard this around the paddock as well, that not only will tomorrow bring a change of turbo, but actually another whole internal combustion unit as well, and the MGUK and everything else. But of course, to do that, they needed to take PU3 today. So then they'll take PU4 tomorrow to get that into the pool. That will mean, obviously, a start at the back of the grid, but with more elements in the pool. That might be some explanation. They might not do that. I believe so, if you cycle through it. You're not? I don't think you have to show evident damage, do you?
It's not that. I just wondered if... Do you remember a few years ago at Spa, Mercedes did that, which was perfectly within the rules at the time. And wasn't there then a change so that you couldn't take more than one extra power unit for that weekend and keep them both in the pool? I'll check it out.
Yeah, let's check.
I'll probably need to reread the sporting regs on that one, which will help me sleep tonight.
Look at that again. But yeah, that's just a theory running up and down here in the pit lane that I thought I would relay up to you. That yeah, not only do you have to watch out tomorrow for a potential 10th-place grid drop for Charles Leclerc, potential being the operative word there, but also they could even they might have taken the new power unit 3 today in order to take a power unit 4 tomorrow. The sidetrack of that, of course, is, well, it's all right taking all these new bits. Are they sure that these new bits are fixed without the reliability problems that affected the previous bits?
That's a very good point, well made. I'm just thinking, without looking at the sporting regs, that they can take a new internal combustion engine third of the season, because that is part of the pool. That doesn't incur you a penalty. It's just if it was a 4th and 5th, I'm not sure you'd be allowed to do that. This is Pierre Gasly. See that bollard? Should have gone to the left of that.
Yeah.
See, I read the race director's instructions, Jensen, and I'm not even racing.
Yeah, but you're not doing 130 miles an hour.
That's a fair point, well made.
So it is difficult because it means you're pointing towards a wall to go around that arrow. And it's the regulations, and it looks, when you look at it from the air, it looks easy to get round it, right? But
has he got the chance to scrub enough
that's
speed
the
off?
problem. He's committed to the corner more so than most. Most of them bail out earlier. He's committed to the corner, and I think he would have had to have turned left to go around it. So it is regulations, but he probably will say it's the safest thing I could have done.
And I think that's the sort of explanation that bears out why you need a former driver in with the stewards.
No, I'm not doing it.
Oh, really? Damn, I'm on 10% if you get the job, to be honest. Although they only get expenses. No, I think that's why you need a driver. Emmanuel Pirro is the former driver this weekend. And that just helps them, the stewards, just understands what it's like in the cockpit and why he couldn't go to the left. Well, explain. You should do this driver steward thing.
Thank you.
You'd be absolutely superb. Ash just tickled me that you immediately thought I was auditioning you for the job. You're too busy.
I know I am.
Very busy boy at the moment. As is Lance Stroll this weekend in his home race. He and Nicholas Latifi. Brand new crash helmet, as you can see, for Lance Stroll, with a maple leaf right at the top and it being a different colour to his previous crash helmet. He's not gone for the Aston Martin green. And into turn 10 we go, only half a second off the pace through the first couple of corners on this one. Lance Stroll, as I said, needs to break the curse of not getting out of Q1 at his home race. But he has gone from 17th on the grid here and finished 9th twice. A good long the Hail Mary first stints.
Yeah, he's good at them. Do you see through turn 8 how much head banging he had? Because he hit the curve pretty hard.
Yeah.
Not a bad lap up to P6. And his head bounced off of both sides of the headrest. It's amazing the impact you get through the body.
Absolutely.
You know, you don't realise when you're not a driver, but you also lose vision when that happens. So trying to pick out the apex for the next corner is very difficult.
The good thing about that lap time for Inchano, his teammate 10th and a bit ahead of him, Aston Martin 5th and 6th at the moment, as Mike Crack watches on from the pit wall, the team principal.
Yeah, I mean, they're carrying on, aren't they? Decent start of the weekend, 7th and 9th in FP1. Certainly, this looks like another competitive showing for them. I have read the sporting rules, by the way, Crofty, because I've got a bit more time
2
than you.
seconds.
And this still, yeah, copy. We still have the problem. We need to box this up again. Box. Yeah, copy.
Bottas came out for a couple of laps and is back into the garage again. This is turning into another disappointing practice session. Go on, back to those rules there, Casey.
Yes, so basically, if you're right, actually. I think they did clarify, didn't they? So now, Article 28.3, to sound officious,
That's the one.
says during any single event, if a driver introduces more than one of the same power unit, which is subject to penalties, only the last element fitted may be used at subsequent events without a further penalty. So basically, if Leclerc introduces the 4th or the 5th one, they can only use that last one without more penalties. So if they went back to
But
use
the
the
3rd
3rd or
and
the
4th
4th,
is okay.
they'd get a
Yeah.
penalty again. Yeah, so you're right. I don't think they can introduce more. It doesn't seem useful for them, perhaps, to introduce more than one.
Good point. Now, we've got a virtual safety car, and I'm not quite sure why. Ladies and gentlemen, put your litter in the bin. And there is a classic example of why you need to put your litter in the bin. Well done, sir, for doing what whoever was the owner of that can in the first place should have done. Yeah?
Let's hope that it slipped out of their hand as they were cheering for their favourite driver. Let's look at it from a positive point of view.
Well, I'm not going to look at it positively at all. Then.
No. But let's hope it was a mistake.
Yeah, well, let's hope it's a mistake. But I tell you what, it's ended up a long way from the grandstand.
It did. It's pretty windy out there.
It is that, to be fair. But put your litter in the bin,
Yes.
ladies and gentlemen.
Agreed.
So. Valtteri Bottas back into the pits.
And this still, yeah, copy. We still have the problem. We need to box this up again. Box. Yeah, copy.
So Valtteri Bottas having a very frustrating afternoon. We just had a virtual safety car for this. A tin can on the track, while Marshall, who gets a round of applause from the local fans. And whilst throwing a can over the wall, he'll go and find a bin and get rid of it. Meanwhile, Alex Albon out on the track, and we can follow his progress in the Williams. See how much curb he took there.
He was aggressive.
Yeah.
It's good to see. This is a tricky place. As I said, you've got to get to the curb here, as he does nicely. Nice change of direction. See the front inside wheel comes off the ground a little bit there to the right as it's off-cambered. But no, it's looking a pretty nice lap so far. He's getting the front end in nicely to the...
There's still something weird under shifting. Have a look. Okay, understood. Stand by.
So Bottas is struggling.
Box again, I'm sorry. Yeah, box.
Bottas is
Try to
struggling
minimize downshifts again.
with anti-stall. Sorry for talking over the radio, but it kept coming back.
Yeah, we thought it finished, to be honest. That was Bottas that Albon just got past. He's just going to limp back to the pits for a bit. There he is in the back.
So he's getting anti-stall under braking. So it's like the rears are locking, basically. That's the system thinks is happening, I guess.
Yeah, is that linked to a brake-by-wire issue?
Yeah, it's most likely. And then you're obviously not going to get any engine braking or anything because it thinks it's in neutral, basically.
Alex Albon crosses the line, only 16th fastest despite all his aggression there. For a Williams team who haven't progressed from Q1 with either car since Bahrain, there's a new update, almost a new philosophy coming in the near future, and I'm not quite sure when it's going to hit the track. But Karun, are we thinking Silverstone for a Williams upgrade?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, it can't come soon enough. I think they've shown flashes of speed. I'll tell you who is showing speed, Crofty, just to switch subjects. This guy, the reigning world champion, Max Verstappen, fastest of anybody in the first two sectors. So this could be a new benchmark. 14.5 is his time to beat on the medium compound tyres. Good, clean run through the final chicane, staying to the right-hand side for the shortest run to the line. And he finds 4/10 on the soft tyres. That's sort of where we're looking at, isn't it? The gap between the medium and the soft, Pirelli reckon, is about half a second. So Verstappen on target for that. But we're starting to see now Leclerc coming out on a set of softs as well. Vettel, Stroll, Tsunoda. So we're seeing Perez here on our screen up at turn 8 and 9.
Yes, and onwards he goes, as close to the wall as he possibly can without touching it. Sergio Perez just lean on the car a little bit into the hairpin, but he's 7/10 down on his teammate.
He's been struggling this session compared to Max. Max out the box was on it from the word go, wasn't it? It's probably his best session we've seen for a very long time. And Checo can't match him. He's a long way off matching him at the moment. 7/10 in 2 sectors.
Down towards the final chicane comes Max Verstappen. Good overtaking spot in the race if you need it. This sort of pace, will Verstappen have to overtake anybody? To be fair, Perez, I should say. 1 second off. Yeah, would his teammate have to overtake anybody? But Perez there, 1 second off the pace. At that rate, he's got a lot of overtaking.
He has.
To do in this race.
Fernando's on his outlap, and he was P4. He's obviously put a new set of boots on, so it'll be interesting to see where he is. He was very competitive before. He was P2.
Yeah, he was. Failed to read. This is not a circuit that Fernando Alonso likes too much, to be honest. Failed to reach the checkered flag here more times than any other circuit in his career. So here goes Fernando Alonso. Normally, we'd turn the sound up and we'd have a listen to the Alpine, but apologies, Christian Horner's standing by on the pit wall. I don't want to keep you waiting for 1 minute and 14 seconds, Christian. Tell us why one of your drivers is a second clear of the other. Can you fill the blanks in for us?
Yeah, afternoon, Crofty. I don't mind if you want to listen to the Alpine. The setup, basically, I think is the key thing at the moment, both trying different things. So, Max is obviously pretty happy with the balance that he's got, and Checo less so. I mean, Max is another 10th and a half up through the first sector there. It'll be interesting to see if it hangs on for the rest of this lap.
So is that something a driver would have a preference on setup, and then together with his engineer would just be allowed to go freestyle on that one, or do the team dictate setup a little bit more at times?
We're sort of tailoring it to suit the different nuances of the drivers. So we know Max is a little bit more demanding from the front of the car. Checo's a bit more classic, a bit smooth, a bit like the man sitting next to you. And so it does require slightly different setups for the two different drivers, and they work together with their engineers to tune and optimise what they've got.
Christian, we were talking about engine penalties, and you know, we think we've got Tsunoda, we think there's potentially one coming from Ferrari. I want to ask you the point, because I remember a couple of years ago you mentioned, I think, the number 5 being what you thought was an optimum number for people to try and get through without all of the mess of penalties. Now you're an engine manufacturer. What is the incremental cost? Because surely the biggest cost is R&D, isn't it? I mean, is there a huge incremental cost between going from 3 to 5?
Well, you sort of build, there's a good argument for and against. I mean, you build the engines anyway because you take them on a world tour because you need the spares. You can't have them, afford not to have them with you. So you end up in Abu Dhabi with a bunch of engines that potentially aren't used. Now, the incremental cost of these things are, anywhere between 1.5 and probably 2 million quid. So, obviously pretty expensive.
Ted, down in the pit lane, where we've just seen Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz get quite close to each other. You got a question for Christian?
Yeah, hello, Christian. It's just very, very busy down here, just seeing Yuki Tsunoda coming back into the pits. Just a question basically about the Piranha Club's latest order of meeting and agenda about this FIA technical directive. James Allison, I spoke to him in the break. He's saying the sport as a whole needs to dig itself out of the hole that it's actually put itself into with just how stiff these cars are. And I know as a racing driver yourself, Christian, you wouldn't like to inflict what could be potential long-term health damage on these drivers if they are having issues with their backs and nerve damage and everything else. So can you not be flexible with making sure that all the cars get to have their banging issues, their bouncing issues, even their porpoising issues, even though everyone seems to have fixed those, sorted without affecting any kind of order of performance?
Well, the obvious answer to that, Ted, is no, you can't. I mean, it's the same rules for everybody. Some cars have the issues, some cars don't. For the ones that don't, inevitably there will be a push to try and get regulations changed. That's the nature of the game, that's the nature of Formula One, and you can understand James and his drivers inevitably pushing for that. But it would be unfair to have effectively what would deem to be a regulation change halfway through a year because a team has missed a target. The emphasis should be on that team, obviously, to sort the issue out. And if the car is dangerous, that's down to the FIA. They still have a black flag in their armoury. If they deemed a car was dangerous or unacceptable for a driver's safety, they would and should black flag it.
Okay, so just to be clear, sorry, Crofty, just to be clear, neither Max nor Checo has ever had problems with the car bottoming out and hurting their backs.
Certainly never had any back issues. I think we've had one race where we've had a little bit of porpoising, but nothing of any real significance.
Thanks, Ted. Christian, always good to chat. And I totally see your points about changing the rules halfway through the season when some have got it right and some have got it wrong. How then does that translate into the argument about the cost cap and where some teams feel that they might be spending too much money and other teams feel that the cost cap's absolutely fine and we shouldn't raise it?
Well, I think, again, if you inflicted something like that, there's a significant cost attached to it, and that comes nowhere else other than development cost for argument's sake. Now, what we're talking about with the cost cap is inflation. In the UK, they're talking about 11% of inflation, in the second half of the year, and that's due to what's going on in the world. It's not something that was predicted. It's a genuine force majeure situation, and I think, again, it's something down to the FIA to take the appropriate action. Otherwise, you're going to have probably 7 teams that break the cap in some shape or form by the end of the year.
Yeah, but other teams won't be breaking the cap, and surely the porpoising issues that nobody foresaw, really, isn't that force majeure as well? What I'm trying to get, some people might find your argument is absolutely sound on the case of porpoising, but it's the same argument for cost cap as well.
Well, not really, two different things. The porpoising is within the control of a team.
But so's the cost cap. You don't have to put a new front wing on every race.
No, certain things. It's not about putting a front wing on. It's about the cost of energy, it's the cost of inflation, it's the cost of living, cost of putting fuel in your car that are going up for everybody. It's the cost of supply of parts, it's the cost of freight, it's the cost of electrics, it's of utilities. So they're things you can't control. And therefore, that's why I think majority of teams do feel that there's a an issue that needs to be addressed there.
And you think you've got the backing then of the majority of teams? It's a fascinating subject, this, and I think it's one that's going to run for a few weeks yet.
Look, I'm sure, and there's no perfect answer, but you know that's nobody could have predicted what's going on when the cost cap came in. You know that's unfortunately a consequence of issues in the world that we live in today. But hopefully common sense will prevail and a sensible solution can be found.
Christian, great to talk. Thanks ever so much for your time. I can see your driver being pushed back into the garage behind you on the pit wall, and Max Verstappen now 8/100ths of a second quicker than Charles Leclerc. But Carlos Sainz 2/10ths back. While we were chatting, Karun, the Ferraris starting to show their pace a bit more.
Yeah, they're starting to come to the fore, aren't they, as we watch Pierre Gasly. Wow, that was close to the wall. Coming out of the final corner, stays up to the right-hand side, gets himself into the top 6. So Gasly once again showing good form. It's not been as consistent, has it, his form this season, as compared to last year, where he was really one of the most outstanding qualifiers. But Baku, he showed some good pace, and here once again into the top 6. But Sebastian Vettel, Crofty, P4, he's got a new lease of life, hasn't he? This Aston is starting to unlock some serious speed.
But not just that. We always talk about horses for courses, don't we? And those that have had success at certain tracks over the years come back to those tracks and are straight in the zone straight away. Look, we can watch Sebastian Vettel now. I think this is he's coming into the pits.
Okay, also something came loose in the left foot. Copy, we'll have a look. Box. Something is definitely loose. Seems to come loose in the last corner, so copy that. We'll have a good look.
A very good time to come into the pits if he's got something loose in the cockpit, which they're having a look. A bit of damage there on the underside of the Aston Martin, or that could just be a case of it's had a few races and no time to really replace the parts. 11 starts, Karun, in Montreal, 100% finishing record, and only started outside the top 3 once here in the last 10 races. It's no surprise to see Sebastian Vettel up there on a track that he loves.
Yeah, he's been very good around here. I mean, 9/10 at the moment ahead of Lance Stroll, and it does appear like they've both had to go on the soft tires. We are seeing some big gaps, actually, between teammates, bigger than we'd expect. So Fernando Alonso is half a second up, 6/10ths up, in fact, on Esteban Ocon. George Russell, P7 for Mercedes, 14.9, so they're still clearly struggling a little bit. But half a second ahead of Lewis Hamilton. So Hamilton, a Montreal master, Crofty, 7 times a winner round here. He's down at P13 at the moment. I have to say, actually, Daniel Ricciardo carrying on his good form from Baku. I thought that was one of the best races we've seen in the Ricciardo-McLaren era, actually. He genuinely looked like he was bang on pace with Lando Norris, finished ahead of him in the race. There's a bit of team order stuff going on, which I know Ted wasn't happy about. But ultimately, the bottom line was his pace was good, and he's carried on here within half a tenth of 500s, isn't it, away from Norris so far.
Fast laps done for a while, thank you, Karun, and race simulations to come up. We'll go trackside with Martin Brundle in a few moments' time. Jenson Button has left us because he's gone off to record a feature where he gets to drive the track, and suddenly it's Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc separated by 8/100ths. And there is Yuki Tsunoda, who will start this race right at the back of the grid. The power unit situation, Karun, that you were talking to Christian about, sadly coming back to haunt AlphaTauri this weekend. He needs to put new parts into the system, and as a result starts at the back of the grid. But will fancy his chances, will Yuki Tsunoda, who I do feel is having a decent season so far, and seems to have just calmed down a little bit from some of the erraticness nature of parts of his rookie season.
He's matured, hasn't he? You know, last year we saw one too many errors, and particularly in qualifying, but he's definitely matured and settled down. So I'm interested to see how he gets on. His pace relative to Gasly this morning was pretty good. He was only a tenth away from Gasly's time, and this is a tough circuit. I mean, let's not forget, he's not been here before, of course, because Formula One didn't race here in Montreal last year, so it's his first time racing here. And this circuit is a bit of a builder-upper. You know, you have to get comfortable with the car moving around. You have to get comfortable with the car bouncing off the curbs and landing at funny angles, getting up and close to the wall. So for Tsunoda to be within a tenth of Gasly in the first session, that's a good effort, really. And let's bear in mind, he's not chasing the ultimate lap time, is he? I'll tell you what he will be doing though tomorrow. I suspect he'll be out there giving Gasly a tow.
2 secs.
I watched Ricciardo, not sure what he's doing. Watch Ricciardo. Man, he's pushing. He was on a flying lap.
Confusion for Joe Guan Yu. Let's have a look at it from Ricciardo's perspective.
Is everything okay?
Yeah, just traffic.
Copy.
Yeah.
Can you excuse the Alfa Romeo that, given that it's Joe Guan Yu's first time here?
No, absolutely not. I mean, you know, he just parked dawdling on the racing line, and I blame the team a little bit as well, because they should have warned him when Ricciardo was coming out of turn 2. So yeah, not good. Bottas is sitting there, Coffee, with his helmet and kit on.
And has been for a while.
20 minutes to go. Yeah, he's had a lot of really bad Fridays, hasn't he? Missing sessions. Think of Miami, had the crash. Barcelona, the car broke down. Monaco as well. There was some sort of reliability issue, wasn't there, on the Friday practice session? So I feel like he's on a bit of a run of bad Fridays, but good weekends otherwise. You know, he's been a very consistent performer this year.
He recovers well for it. You're absolutely right. And out now for the race simulations, Charles Leclerc. An important race simulations as well. If our predictions are to be born true tomorrow, he's going to have to do some overtaking, and he's not going to be starting this race on pole position because he might need an extra turbocharger, and as you can see, has already used 3 this season out of the allocation of 3. And there are the dark clouds hovering over Montreal at the moment. Yesterday's deluge.
Okay, Max, so weather update. Expecting heavy rain in 30 minutes, which is 10 minutes beyond the end of the session, but we could expect some drops towards the end as well.
Oh, that's very lovely.
Clouds over Canada and Montreal, to be exact. We're going to get some heavy rain.
So weather update. Expecting heavy rain in 30 minutes, which is 10 minutes beyond the end of the session, but we could expect some drops towards the end as well.
Oh, that's very lovely.
Simply swimmingly lovely.
He seems quite relaxed, doesn't he?
Verstappen. Well, he should be, Karun. He's the fastest driver on the track. He's shown pace in the first session, pace in the second session, and whilst in the medium speed corners, Charles Leclerc has got the advantage. Elsewhere on the track, the Red Bull seems very much the car to be in here. More cars getting onto the track now, and I would imagine they will want to get on as soon as possible if that weather forecast is right, and we are going to get a few sprinkles towards the end of this session. However, they did an awful lot this morning thinking it was going to rain then, but of course it didn't.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a circuit. They're playing a little bit of catch-up from not being here the last couple of years, but of course it's a completely different car. It's like a different category, this car. So in some ways, actually, it doesn't really matter that they don't have the data for the last 2 years. The only difference is the asphalt. You know, how has this track, in terms of the asphalt, changed over these last 3 harsh winters that they tend to have up in Montreal?
You know the Montreal winters and the Canadian winters better than us because you tend to come out here with your family from time to time. But it goes from 30 degrees regularly during the course of the summer to well, what feels like minus 30 degrees during the course of the winter. So it's no wonder that the surface is not the most silky smooth that the drivers will race on during the course of a year.
It's not actually. Yes, about the smoothness is one thing, but it's weird, the stone there itself. You get this sort of sliding on the top surface and this graining on the top surface. It's very unusual, the stone they've got. But they've obviously had to use it to make sure it survives these extreme weather changes. As you say, you go from, well, it feels like minus 35 sometimes, the wind chill, to, in the summer it's mid-30s sometimes.
Absolutely. Right, Ted, down to you on Valtteri Bottas.
Yeah, down at Alfa Romeo Sauber, and still Valtteri, poor Valtteri, sits on the workbench at the back of the garage.
Still very gusty.
Wind is very gusty as that thunderstorm comes in. And yeah, for those who are meant to be filming something at the end of this session, that's an unwelcome bit of news, that weather update, isn't it, Crofty?
Yes.
Yes.
Sadly.
Yeah, not good. Anyway, this Valtteri Bottas. That's not you, that's me who has to film something at the end of the session. Valtteri Bottas continues to sit there next to Tiffany Cromwell, who's wearing still in her Simpsons t-shirt, and it seems that this anti-stall system has been designed, might as well have been designed by Homer rather than Lisa Simpson, because they still can't get it to work. And electronics based, but it does mean that the car can't go out without going into an anti-stall, so obviously there's no progress to be made. There's no point going out when Valtteri can't even drive the car because of this fiddly little electronics issue affecting the gearbox and the anti-stall system. So it doesn't look like it's going to be fixed anytime soon, unfortunately, for Valtteri.
Not good then, so a maximum of 19 cars out on the track, of which 3 are still in the garage, giving Martin Brundle trackside plenty of opportunity to see how they make their way through the final chicane. Martin.
Absolutely right. I'm down at turns 13 and 14, known as the final chicane. The blue wall on the other side there is the famous Champions Wall. Now, there's only one car that will go over those curbs, and it's not a Mercedes of George Russell there. Both Russell and Hamilton are being super neat and never, ever touching the orange curb. Let's see what Perez does. Like, you can tell they've put fuel in, because they've just stopped glancing through here. Perez takes a little bit of curb, but it's the Ferrari, as you just saw there. Only the Ferrari on tanks and empty, when they were being a lot more acrobatic, were really taking a lot of that curb, which is a handy feature, coming handy in places like Monza as well. The Aston Martin super accurate through it. Every so often a car flashes past there because it's going in the pits, and this is the area you get where one's slowing down and the other is steaming in the pits. The Red Bull there was just lovely. He picked up the throttle and the back of the car was just gently sliding, and he just power drifted it through there as if the throttle pedal was connected to the steering wheel. Actually, that was great. I don't know which driver it was, if I'm honest, but have a look down the track. Got hit on the air by a stone a moment ago. We'll see 1 or 2 more through, but it's like threading the eye of a needle as the Mercedes goes through. That was Lewis. You can see you've got to get your 2-meter wide car through there, well over 100 miles an hour, and some cars, if they touch that curb, they're going to be straight in the wall. So wonderful commitment. That's Perez, and there again is the Ferrari climbing the curb. So really interesting down there. When they were going for lap times, Verstappen and Leclerc were on another level through here of just sheer speed taken through the middle of that chicane. Back to you, Crofty.
Thanks, Martin. Absolutely fascinating down there. And one thing I noticed, Karun, whilst Martin was talking, twice we saw Ricciardo and Leclerc go through that chicane, twice Leclerc behind Ricciardo. And normally you wouldn't see 2 cars so close together, but Ferrari there getting a very good grasp of data of what it's like to follow another car closely for quite some time, which makes me think once again they're thinking they might not be on pole for this race this weekend, because Leclerc is going to be taking a penalty.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, of course, Carlos could be on pole. We've seen him on the front row a couple of times this season, but you're bang
with Charles Leclerc, that side of the garage, yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. I think they're thinking about it, aren't they? Because you've got opportunities with the DRS, but the really big stop is only down the hairpin. This chicane, you know, unless you get a monster toe and a really special exit out of the hairpin, you don't see as many overtaking moves down the chicane as we used to. But let's see. I mean, Leclerc's aim will still be to get in the top 4, won't it? You know, if it's starting at the back of the grid, we've seen it in the past with Lewis Hamilton, Brazil most famously, coming through the pack. That's been Ocon, Coffee. I think he picked up a bit more garbage there, so a bit of plastic, I think. And he, of course,
and
don't forget, this morning.
We saw this morning, didn't we?
Yeah, he got a bit of what looked like kitchen rolls stuck on his brake disc. And I mean, in all seriousness, if that happened, it happened on his 4th lap of the weekend in FP1 in this case, but if that happened on the 4th lap of the Grand Prix, that would be the end of his race. That would absolutely be a car stopper. So it's a serious matter for people at the circuit to make sure on a windy day like this, try and keep their litter, under control and in the right place in the bin, because you could actually cost a driver not just a race, but if they have a brake failure, that is a really big safety concern.
Did you see when Esteban Ocon was going down the main straight, the litter that was on the side in the grass by that main straight? I'm actually looking out of our commentary box window at the moment. I can see at least 4 plastic bottles down there as well, which I don't really want to see that. I know things blow around a bit, but there are bins here, to be honest. But it's one of the things that happens at a street track. You do get debris coming onto the track like that. Karun, I've got a question for you here. I know you like your trivia, yeah? But what links, other than being Formula One drivers, Nico Hülkenberg, Theo Fabi, Jean-Pierre Jabouille, and Jim Clark, and Charles Leclerc? Great question.
Wow, that is an eclectic mix.
Yeah. What's the connection? And thank you very much to
I don't know.
James Mackenzie of the Formula Nerds for this one. He sent me an email saying, Crofty, yeah, I know you like your stats. James was the guy that brought us the stat about Lewis and Max before Abu Dhabi being 9 seconds apart over their race times during the course of the season, having raced a distance from London to New York City. So I like James and his stats here. They're always pretty good. Jim Clark, Jean-Pierre Jabouille, Theo Fabi, Nico Hülkenberg, and Charles Leclerc have all had more poles than podiums in Formula One history, he says.
They've had more pole positions than they've had podiums, you mean?
Actually, no, I've got this completely wrong. No, 4 of them have. Charles Leclerc, could join him on that one, given the amount of poles that he's been picking up. Yeah, more poles than podiums in their Formula One careers. And Charles Leclerc is the man that's been getting poles, not podiums, this season. That's why he sent me that one.
I mean, the Nico Hülkenberg one is particularly harsh, isn't it? Because he had the one pole in Brazil.
And never got any podiums.
Didn't get the podiums.
Despite leading a race a couple of times as well. Jim Clark had 33 poles and 32 podiums, which I didn't realise.
I mean,
to be fair,
32 podiums and 25 wins for Jim Clark. That's an amazing stat.
Yeah.
Actually, if you think he's finished second or third only 7 times and won 25 races.
I mean, we were marvelling at the Max Verstappen one this morning, where he's on his 150th Grand Prix start, and he's had 25 wins and 25 second places, so a third. Big lock-up for Magnussen. A third of his Grand Prix finishes have been in the top 2.
I mean, listen, these are the extraordinary drivers we're talking about, aren't we? Jim Clark, Jackie Stewart, Max Verstappen. I genuinely think he is one of those extraordinary talents that comes along in Formula One history every 6-7 years. Lewis, Fernando, Michael, Senna, Prost, etc. I genuinely think, in terms of God-given talent, Max is one of those once-in-a-generations.
And I was talking to Jensen about this a couple of nights ago, actually, about how he seems a different driver this season. The frenetic urgency of getting things done straight away when it comes to an overtaking move, it just seems to have dissipated a little bit. There's a calmness to his driving where he can play the long game because he knows what it's like now to cross that line at the end of the season and become a world champion. Yeah,
we're seeing Magnussen here have a lock-up. I agree, but you know what, Crofty, and we talked about it, I think, after Saudi. I still believe that he actually races Leclerc differently to how he races or raced Lewis last year, because I think he was trying to establish himself against Lewis, right? Lewis was the incumbent, the king of the castle, and Max had to come along, or felt he had to come along and effectively dethrone him, and got his elbows out a bit more. Whereas with Leclerc, who we're seeing on the screen now, they've grown up as peers, and I feel like Max doesn't feel like he has to necessarily, aggressively bump him off that pedestal, effectively. He sees them sees Leclerc as an equal, as someone he's raced against since they were kids, and therefore there's less elbows out in the way they go racing with each other, and it's cleaner, and they give each other more space, and maybe some of it is maturity and having that world championship, but I do think there's a shift in the mindset for sure.
I'm just looking at the times whilst we're chatting, and it's very difficult to keep a track on 20 or even 19 drivers with Bottas in the garage and every single lap they're on. But Alonso, Russell, not only with pace but very comparable times out there, and a little bit faster on a couple of laps than Charles Leclerc, who we're on with now in the Ferrari. This is just on the race runs and the race pace. Verstappen out there, I'll give you some more of his times in a moment, after we've headed down to Ted at McLaren.
Well, can I be the first one to say, ooh, look at them clouds coming in?
Well, you certainly can.
Down by the hairpin.
They're a bit dark, aren't they, ahead?
They are. It's sort of sweeping in from the northwest to the sort of southeast. So it's already been over Ottawa, and then it's coming over Montreal. So,
here it's coming in from turn 10, is that right?
Of course, the capital of Canada, Crofty, is
somewhere, it's like Brasilia.
I've already said it.
Brazil.
Ottawa.
I've already said it.
Right.
I just said it.
Did you say somewhere like Brazil?
Bit of a giveaway.
Yeah, well, it's like...
Brasilia. No, I know what he means,
we
Karim.
all think it's like Sao Paulo or Rio de Janeiro, but it's not. We all think it's Sydney in Australia, but it's Canberra. That sort of thing.
Brazil, exactly. I think it's quite right. I understood what you were talking about. But I'm down at McLaren, where actually I've had fairly straightforward day. Lando Norris, Daniel Ricciardo running together. Ricciardo did say earlier today that it's a bit too early to know whether...
This car is not undrivable, man.
And is this a consequence, I wonder, of Hamilton going one way on setup and with the team looking at experimental setups, and George Russell going a more steady traditional route that maybe Lewis needs to converge on for tomorrow, because this setup doesn't seem to be working for Hamilton. Carry on.
Certainly hope not, because it was different from this morning, which was also undrivable, was it not?
He was losing the rears.
Okay, well, we'll see. Mercedes struggles continue. But yeah, not going too badly for McLaren, actually, getting their race pace done. Ricciardo said it was a bit too early to know if Baku was a turning point, but certainly there were some things on the car that they discovered which will help going through into the next few races. And by the way, that porpoising that we saw from Ricciardo was actually a fault on the car, not a characteristic. They found something on the car suspension that was awry, that was wrong. So explained why Ricciardo was bumping around the track and Lando wasn't, and rather underlines that McLaren haven't suddenly found porpoising issues from somewhere unexpected. It was an issue with the car, but that is good for them down here at McLaren, where they've got the Circle K sponsorship on the side of their car. Have you noticed that?
No, I haven't.
Circle K.
Who are?
It's a convenience store, stateside. Made famous, of course, in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, which is Strange Things Are Afoot at the Circle K. You don't remember that? You're too young.
Can I just say I've never watched Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and I know I should have done, but I haven't.
I have no idea what he's talking about.
He's talking about one of the great cult movies of all time, and I've never seen it.
The great Keanu Reeves and line, Strange Things Are Afoot at the Circle K.
You know me, Ted, if it's not Spinal Tap, I'm not interested. We are watching George Russell now all over the rear wing of the Williams of Nicholas Latifi ahead of him. Again, a great view of what it's like to follow another car here, Karun, around the circuit Gilles Villeneuve.
And he's able to follow quite closely. I mean, obviously, you don't know what fuel loads and programs they're running on, and you assume the Mercedes has more performance than the Williams, but I'm encouraged to see how closely he was able to follow through turns 5, 6 over there. So that bodes well for the race, isn't it? Particularly if we're expecting to see Leclerc come through the pack. Tsunoda, he's always good for a bit of fireworks in a wheel-to-wheel combat situation.
I tell you what we're also getting a great view of, the rear of that Williams, and every time Latifi steps on the power, you see how the car just steps out a little bit, and when you're that close to the walls, that tends to focus the mind somewhat. Now, the Mercedes straight line speed, they've not really concentrated much on that of late, but he's got a bit of speed with DRS here, and he's going for an overtake before the final chicane. Latifi lets him go, and the hospitality unit that occupies our former commentary box by the Wall of Champions would have loved that, I'm sure, getting a close-up view as down the main straight goes George Russell ahead of Nicholas Latifi, and behind them, trying to work out who the other car is. It's Yuki Tsunoda, I think, in the Alpha Tauri. Hamilton's back in the garage. I dare say that's his work done in earnest. To be honest, might come out for a practice start on the grid to finish off this session. Looking at the times, I know Russell's been bogged down behind the Williams for a couple of laps. The Ferrari of Charles Leclerc was just starting to eke out a bit more pace in comparison to the Mercedes of Russell, and where Fernando Alonso's times, I haven't quite got them to hand. Verstappen, meanwhile, a 1:18.1 over 14 laps, Karun, current pace. That'll be right up there, if not, I would imagine, the best pace we've had overall in these race simulations.
I'll tell you what's interesting to me, Croft, is it seems like Leclerc's done all of his running in this session on the soft tyre. That's another indication to me that they're trying to understand what is the best way to optimize a car for a long stint on that soft tyre. And if he's going to start at the back, start on the soft, get through a bit of traffic with a good launch, and just see how long you can run with it. Or maybe give them the option of a two-stop, get out of traffic. They've got to give themselves option here. And to me that's really interesting, because we don't often see that, do we? A driver use just one type of tyre throughout an entire free practice session.
Thanks, Karun. Checkered flag is now out, and there is Max Verstappen behind Daniel Ricciardo, taking that checkered flag. And his last lap time was in the 1:17, so 1:17.9 for Verstappen as he crossed the line. And you're absolutely right, Karun, Charles Leclerc has done all of this session on the soft compound tyre. So there's the sector times as to where Leclerc's got an advantage over Verstappen. Interesting, the final sector, which is basically the big long back straight, Karun, Verstappen, a tenth or just over a tenth of a second quicker than the Ferrari.
But all of that is kind of what we've seen all season long. The Red Bull tends to run a bit more, aims for more straight line speed, I should say. We're running less downforce, and so we saw it in Baku as well. The Ferrari quicker in the corners, the Red Bull quicker down the straight. We saw it in Miami. So they're playing to their different strengths, and ultimately across the lap, only 81 thousandths of a second between them. What Ferrari need is that guy on screen, Carlos Sainz, taking the fight to the other guy on screen, Max Verstappen. That's what Ferrari really need on a weekend where Leclerc is, and I have to say, it's not yet confirmed, we're all expecting this to happen, but if Leclerc is going to start at the back, they need Sainz.
Well, hello and welcome to third practice for the Canadian Grand Prix. It is round 9 of this 22-race 2022 season. We've travelled over 5,500 miles west from Baku to get here to the Ile de Notre Dame and the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. It's a 4.36-kilometre circuit, or 2.71 miles. There are 14 turns, 6 left and 8 right. We've got 2 DRS detection points, but 3 DRS activation zones between 7 and 8, 11 and 12, and one after the final corner round to turn 1. Well, these are the tyres. They'll do 70 laps around here tomorrow using these C5, C4 and C3. Yet again, for the third week in a row, the softest 3 compounds in the Pirelli range. But they will also have the inters and the wets, because as you've seen, the weather is terrible today. They've all been given an extra set of intermediate tyres for this FP3 session because conditions are cold and wet. Karun Chandok, it is 11 degrees outside right now. The track temperature is just 16.6 degrees. And, well, they're going to have to get out in it, aren't they? Because this could well be, or these could well be the conditions for qualifying later on.
You should be in London, Rach. It's 23 degrees today.
Yeah. I don't need to know that.
No, it's obviously very tricky conditions, but you're absolutely right. You know, if we expect the track to be wet for qualifying, then they have to go out there and do some laps and learn. And as Jensen said, you know, the people you feel most sorry for are these fans out in the grandstands trying to cover themselves with anything they could find. But it's we've seen this in Montreal. You know, the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. Yeah, we've seen so many wet races there over the years. You go back way into the early 80s and stories of Gilles Villeneuve being 5 seconds a lap faster than anybody else. And, you know, you can see the radar there. And the circuit is that the middle of those concentric circles.
Right in the middle of all that.
Exactly. You can see the window on the right-hand side of your screen there. That shows just the cloud hovering above. It's not really moved. I have to say, I've been watching that radar for the past half hour or so, and it's not really moving, so it doesn't seem like there's enough wind to blow it over, which is why everyone's still expecting qualifying to be wet.
Well, I mean, I can tell you that they're telling us at the moment the risk of rain for the practice session. Yeah, it's 100%. We kind of figured that already. Yesterday, there was such a deluge. Normally, you go home and you wring out your socks and you try and dry out your trainers. I had to wring out my entire dress last night when we got back because we got completely engulfed in a downpour yesterday, Jensen, didn't we? I mean, it was windy, it was rainy, it was, I guess, Canada conditions, because you like these conditions, don't you, Jensen?
Hello, good morning to people here, and good afternoon to everyone in the UK. Yes, I do like these conditions. It's a shame to be actually, well, not a shame. It's never a shame to be here with you, Rachel, but
close.
It would be lovely to be out there on track right now. It's such a special place in the wet. It's really, really tricky, though, in the wet, because there is no room for error on a lot of the exits of the corners. Very, very tight, very slippery curbs. So, yeah, it's tricky. I'm really looking forward to this session.
Me too. You can see there, Charles Leclerc, though, will have a 10-place grid penalty for a new control electronics unit. At the moment, it's 10 places, but as we were talking about yesterday and earlier today, it could possibly be more if they decide to just take more units and get it all done in one painful hit here, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a wet race, there's, you know, anything can happen. So I think you probably would want to be at the back of the grid really for the start, knowing you have a good car. Middle of the pack in these conditions wouldn't be best.
No.
But if it's dry, yeah, if you're starting at the back, I think they're looking at the worst result as being fourth. Anything else is a bonus.
Well, while we wait for them to go out, one man who does go well in the wet is Pierre Gasly. He had some good news this morning. We can hear actually now from Franz Tost, his team principal, because there was a team principal's press conference this morning, and he had some news for us all.
And I am really happy now that at least in Baku he could show how good he is, and I hope that we will provide him with a competitive car for the rest of the season, because Pierre has the ability to be in front, and it's just in the hands of the team to give him a really good competitive car.
What about his future with the team?
He will be driver of us, of Scuderia Alfa Tauri in 2023.
Is that confirmed?
This is 100% confirmed.
So, Pierre Gasly stays with AlphaTauri for 2023. Not a massive surprise, not really anywhere for him to go once Red Bull confirmed Sergio Perez being there, but I'm sure he'll continue to impress and be looking around, I guess, after that, Jensen.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one for him. You know, he's stepped up to the A team, if you like, of Red Bull, and it didn't really go his way. It wasn't the easiest situation for him. He stepped back down to AlphaTauri and done an amazing job. Hasn't he? I think he's done a fantastic job. But just so everyone knows, that was a very excited Franz. He might not have seemed it, but he is. I mean, he knows what a talent Pierre Gasly is.
Yeah, that's upper level for Franz, Karun, isn't it? That's upper level for Franz in terms of excitement there.
Well, I don't know. You should I'll wait to see some of those debriefs he has with Yuki Tsunoda. I think that's when we'll see the emotional transfer, shall we say. But as JB said, I think he's been doing a great job, hasn't he, in that car. He's not had as good a season, it has to be said, so far this year as compared to last season. I thought last year he was unquestionably one of the standout qualifiers in particular. But by the way, let's just look at this Alfa Romeo trying to go around this track. Zhou Guanyu, I should say, struggling for traction and grip. There's just no temperature in those tyres. George Russell doesn't look like he's going anywhere in a hurry. Jensen, this is not a comfortable drive around here, is it? With those walls close by, low track temperature, low grip. It's not comfy for the drivers.
No, it's not, and also because we have qualifying just around the corner, you don't want to put it in the wall, so it is tricky. They'll be doing all they can to get heat into these tyres, but obviously with the new regulations, you're not really gaining much heat well, you're getting a lot of heat in the brakes, but you're not using that to your advantage and warming up the wheel and warming up the tyre, so very, very difficult to get tyre temp. The only way of doing it is driving faster and harder, but then you're risking more.
It's just the Alfa Romeos and the Haas out at the moment on track, risking the lap. You could say that, but they're just trying to find. Just talk us through. So he's looking for how much grip he's got. He's looking for.
You got to think the problem is he's got 1,000 horsepower under his right foot, and he doesn't have traction control like you have in your road car. So he's doing he's trying to judge the grip level and trying to slowly apply the throttle pedal and put that power down. But very, very difficult. But the more aggressive you are with the car, the more temperature you're going to get in the tyres. But you're also taking more risk of putting it in the wall. So it's always a tricky one. You come out the pits with hot tyres, but as soon as you get to the end of the pit lane, they're cold already. So you've got to work them back up to temperature.
I think that the most nervous people at this point are the mechanics, aren't they? Because they can basically...
the conditions are quite bad here, to be honest. Okay.
Ooh. Did you see that snap from Charles Leclerc? I was just about to say, it's a very nervous time for the mechanics, as they know if there's any damage from this session, they've got a very stressful 2 hours coming up before qualifying. And Leclerc on that outlap, that was a massive snap he had coming out of 6.
It could be a no lunch break situation, couldn't it, Karun, for all of them?
Yeah, exactly. See Lewis Hamilton getting into his Mercedes. I wonder, I'm curious to see actually what happens with Mercedes in the wet, because in theory you're going slower, the porpoising issue should be less, shouldn't it?
Just looking at this on board.
Just looking at the inside front there, it's so easy to lock a tyre because you don't have tyre temperature and a big snap on the exit as well.
And he really doesn't want to have any issues this weekend, does he?
No. He's been told, hasn't he? It can't continue like it has in terms of the incidents. It's obviously costing the team way too much money.
Which, by the way, Gunther Steiner reminded Crofty and me of very loudly in the motorhome as Mick Schumacher was standing about 10 feet away from us, which was a little bit awkward as Gunther was totting up the damage bill in Baku. And you could almost see Mick squirming in his seat. It was all a little bit awkward, I have to admit.
This is the helmet cam for Carlos Sainz. I mean, familiar conditions to you, Jensen, but we haven't seen them from this angle before.
No, you can see how wet the chicane is there, and this is a really tricky corner in the dry anyway. Look at the wheel spin on the exit there. He doesn't want to put the tyres on the white line or on the curb because there's less grip than there is on the tarmac. But driving around here yesterday, I forgot how tight that chicane is. It's funny. It's so tight, that chicane, and if they're getting a wheel on the curb at the apex, it's going to...
Did you get squirrely through there?
Yesterday in the wet, no, I went way too slow. I was like, it's not worth it. The only thing that could go wrong here is putting it in the wall, so no. For these guys, they got to get out there and practice though, because imagine going out and qualifying in this and not having practiced before to see how the conditions are. So I think we'll see everyone out on track at some point.
And we've also had this weekend the weather come in so quickly, but also go away so quickly. So at the moment, while we're saying it looks like it could rain for qualifying later, there's every chance it could end up being completely dry for that hour.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if it's dry. It's proper cold out there. Is it 11 degrees? I think 12 degrees. So I think it will struggle to drive for qualifying. And I hope it's kind of like this. I think it's going to mix it up, and we're going to see the guys really pushing the cars to the limit. Look at that, squirrely on the exit there for Carlos.
Missed the apex of turn 9, just playing it safely there as well. Would you want to be out there right now? Oh, you always want to be out there driving, don't you?
I think as a driver, nobody enjoys these conditions. It's just some people deal with it better than others. I'd obviously love to drive a Formula 1 car as they are, because I haven't driven one for many years.
If you watch
Aston Martin's...
Sorry, Rick.
Sorry, Rick, go on.
Yeah, watching the steering wheel there on Carlos Sainz's car, you can see in the middle, hopefully we'll get another shot of it soon. He's coming to the pits now. But if we keep an eye on that later on. But the drivers all have the tyre temperatures on their main display page these days, and I think that's something they've had in the Pirelli era for the recent time. And you could see all the numbers were in blue, showing they were all too cold. He's struggling to get any type of temperature. And also they would have adjusted those targets for the wet tyres, and they will again for the intermediates compared to the slicks. But it is so, there we go, you can see there. And those numbers you're seeing, the blocks, you see Carlos have a snap into the 8-9 chicane, bit of adjustment on the brake balance as well. But yeah, just no temperature out there in these tyres.
I was just going to say, you've got the Astons out on track. They actually looked pretty good yesterday. Yuki Tsunoda as well, who's going to start from the back of the grid for the race after taking a new power unit this weekend. I went along, he was driving a Zamboni machine. Do you know what one of those is, Jensen?
Doesn't it smooth the ice?
It does indeed.
Probably.
Yeah, but they're driving them on tarmac in the rain.
Oh.
But they've still got some decent pace. At least Kevin Magnussen having a moment as well, going off onto the grass.
Yeah, the issue now is if you can't get tyre temp, there's a pointless being out there.
I was going to
exactly,
say.
but they could have the same situation in qualifying, so they need to work a way of getting tyre temperature, whether it's if they have more possibilities to put more downforce on, or it's tyre pressures they're going to have to go up on. But once you get them in a working range, you'll find a massive amount of lap time, seconds.
Do you think they will get onto Inters at all this session?
I think they will. I think they will towards the end. If there's enough running out there, we will see them on Inters at the end.
I'm in limpo mode. Okay, Lance, we need to box. It's
not what you want in the wet. You don't want to be going around slowly in the wet because obviously the spray, people can't see you. But it's a shame for him. He's always been quick in the wet.
He has.
Yeah.
He has.
And his home Grand Prix.
Turkey 2020, he was phenomenal, wasn't he? Remember Turkey 2020, got it on pole.
Yeah, no, he's really good in the way. He's got a good feeling for the limit of the. Oh, he's got it going again.
That's a bit odd, isn't it? I mean, maybe there was a bit more to that radio message that we didn't get. One thing to keep in mind, guys, is that don't forget, with all the parc fermé regulations, of course, these cars have to stay in the same specification for tomorrow. So you've got to choose your downforce package, your brake. You can make some adjustments, I think, for cooling, but Jensen was mentioning there in terms of what you can do to get the tires up to temperature, and a big part of that is getting the brakes hot. You get the heat soak come from the brakes through the drum, through the wheel into the tire, but you got to be careful with all of that. Keeping one eye on the forecast for the Grand Prix tomorrow,
which is dry and sunny, I'm very pleased to say right now. So there is a dilemma for them there as well. Ted's in the pit lane for us. Ted, I guess keeping a close eye on exactly what they're doing down there for us and trying to stay dry, I hope.
Hello, Rachel. Hello,
Hi.
Jensen. Hello, Karun.
Oh, you sound so happy.
It's pouring with rain. I've had to dump the shorts. I'm wet through, and I love it because these are the conditions where we have some fun, isn't it? These are the conditions where we see bravery, where we see skill, where we see some daring do from the drivers, keeping it out of the wall, some of them crashing. It's always good fun to have a crash, isn't it, round here? And we get to see some mixed up grids, and that's certainly what we're going to get when we go into qualifying. I don't see it drying out particularly fully in time for qualifying. This does feel like it's sort of set in for the next few hours. I know you've been is that a team radio?
Yeah, that was just Yuki. I didn't catch quite what he said, but he went off. He went off, but he's back on. Keep going.
All right. I normally hear some beeps, and I haven't heard some beeps recently, so I don't know whether it's going to come in or not. But and we're going to see a mixed-up grid, which is always great for what you were just saying, Rach, is a potentially dry Canadian Grand Prix. But down here at Mercedes, well, I've seldom known the team so low. The last race ends with the boss calling the car a bleep box. Lewis Hamilton starts an interview with an off-camera moment yesterday saying, I've never known it so bad. And that reflects on everybody, doesn't it? It reflects on every person in this garage and in the team back at Brackley and in the engine department at Brixworth. So they're on the bottom. They're on the bottom rung of everything, and they need to build themselves back up. So, yeah, interesting to see how they do that.
I think he said it's the worst he's ever had driving a car around here, the worst car he's ever had to drive around here for him. Yeah, but all working very, very hard to try and fix this at the moment, Karun.
Yes, absolutely. These conditions will obviously mask some of the issues I was saying before. I'll tell you what issues aren't going to get masked are Ferraris. The email has dropped, Rach, a minute ago. Charles Leclerc will be starting the Grand Prix at the back of the grid. So Ferrari have committed to taking the new turbo, new MGUH, MGUK, so he will start the Grand Prix at the back of the grid.
That, I take it, will be behind Yuki because Yuki's team put in their details first, didn't they? They declared took the new power units first.
Correct.
So he was starting 20th in Yuki in P19.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that moment for Vettel. Oh, that was a scary one. The only quick corner on the circuit that normally is flat in a Formula One car is not flat in the wet, and without tyre temperature, big snap of oversteer for them, but he caught it.
And this is their first wet running of the weekend, because of course yesterday it was dry until they pulled into the garage and we were all standing outside and the heavens opened. So this is their first experience of this track in the wet this year. Well, for 3 years as well, because they haven't been here since 2019. Well, Kevin Magnussen with the best time on the board so far with a 1:39.148. But nobody really pushing it yet, as we can see.
No, well, they are pushing it. That's the problem.
Yes, but, they are. But I mean,
yeah, they still are really struggling to get tyre temperature, and I think you'll see a big jump if they are able to. But yeah, it's tricky. I think they're going to hope the circuit clears the water a little bit more, and they can get onto the inter tyre and maybe push that one, and that is going to work a bit better. But who knows? I mean, this should be the softer compound. The wet tyre is normally very soft. The blocks move a lot, and that produces temperature, but they're not able to do that right now.
I'm trying to peer out the window and see how bad it actually is right now, and might ask Ted actually if he thinks it's got any lighter at all in the last few minutes. It was very heavy this morning, and it seemed to have eased off a bit. But Ted, if we can come down to you, is it easing
Rachel,
up a little bit?
I'm always here for you. No.
Oh.
It's exactly the same rain intensity as the Formula One engineers would say on the radio. Wasn't it Will Wizzle Joseph, who Lando's engineer, who said to him, it's Lando, rain intensity 3, rain intensity 3. So yeah, I'd say it's still about rain intensity 3, which means solidly raining. You'd really want an umbrella if you were allowed one, and we're not allowed one in the pits. Yeah, enough to soak you to the bone. So
is that out of 5,
that was
Ted?
optimistic. Yes, 3 out of 5.
Good.
Yes.
Just checking.
One being a light drizzle.
Right.
2 being I think it's raining. 3 being I need my coat. 4 being I'm not staying out here.
Need a boat.
And 5 being basically what we've had at 4 p.m., 5 p.m. Yesterday and the day before. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you for that, Ted. I mean, we're getting plenty of rooster tails going past the window, aren't we, Jensen?
Yeah.
Here, it doesn't look like it's clearing off the track very much at all at the moment.
Well, yeah, the important parts, the straights, there's no aquaplaning or anything, which is good to see. So it doesn't look too bad. It looks very drivable out there in terms of the conditions. It's just whether the tyres are switching on.
Plenty of people not going out at the moment, though. We haven't seen the sight of the Red Bulls, the Williams, Pierre Gasly, or the Alpines, and George Russell.
I'll tell you what, though.
Yeah.
Right.
Or Lewis. Yes.
I'm at race control, and I've got some of the onboards here. Watching Yuki Tsunoda and Lando Norris, it's I see Jensen's point. Yeah, it is drivable, and of course they drive around, but it looks very edgy. Tsunoda's looked like he's going to go off the track about 4 times on this lap I'm watching at the moment, and in fact ended up going off the track as I speak at the far hairpin. So and Norris as well. Oh, Ricciardo out of 2. Do you see that? Big snap. So. Yeah. It's going to be very edgy. I mean, this is the biggest thing. And coming into qualifying, we're going to see red flags, aren't we? I just get this. I don't know who it's going to be, but it's going to be one of those sessions where drivers get caught out with a red flag and don't get their laps in. And you want to make sure you get a banker on the board early, especially if you're one of the big teams in Q1. It's it's going to be a complicated quali session, I feel.
Yeah, and Karun, I don't know if that's the case, but I'm guessing that with ground effects cars, you have to lift it up in the wet so you don't get aquaplaning. So you're losing downforce when you drive in the wet, basically. So there's a bigger shift from dry to wet.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely spot on there, because I'm looking at that McLaren there. It looks like, should we say, the upper elements, i.e. the rear wing, the front wing, it's the same package, isn't it? At the end, yes, Ricciardo has another snap.
So
because he's trying to put the power down coming out there, that little kink after the hairpin. So you're absolutely right. If you've got to pick the car up for the standing water, and there are bits of the circuit, aren't there, where you get these little rivers across the track. We've seen it under the bridge into 8-9, for example, is a classic place we've seen drivers get caught out in the past. So it is going to be tricky.
I mean, Karun, if you look at the information screens that we get during these sessions, it's just a stream at the moment of car this off track and continue, this car missed the apex, this was off track and continued, this missed. I mean, it's a stream at the moment of people struggling out there, isn't it? We've got turns 3, 9, 10, 14, 1, 4.
And there's only 6 cars on track, Rach.
Well, Sergio's gone out. He's having an exploratory lap at the moment, so we'll see how he gets on.
Yeah, it's taken them sort of 3 or 4 laps to actually get the tyres working. You know, Sebastian 38.2, not too bad. Tsunoda-san is 38.2 also. When you look at the McLarens, they're 42, so they're over 4 seconds off the pace. So it just shows, yeah, you can get the tyres working, but it's taken a lot of risk to get them in the working range.
Max deciding not to go out, but Sergio's out there having a feel around. There he is. In fact, on track right now, he also took to the Zamboni, had a chat with him. You'll be able to see a little later on today, in fact, and second in the Drivers' Championship right now. And Jensen, in 2018, when I spoke to him, he'd written off. I mean, he started, of course, in the Ferrari Junior Academy in 2012, but he said in 2018, I know I'll never race for a top team again, I'm okay with that. And here he is, and he's second in the championship, fighting for a world championship. Is that fair to say? Will he get that chance?
Yeah, definitely get the chance. You know, whether he can go up against Max, that's another thing altogether, you know. But I feel that Checo is, everyone says he's in the form of his life, and I kind of agree with that. You know, I think he's driving a car that he's confident with. That's a big thing in Formula One, you know. Confidence is really key. Your head has to be in the right place. And I think last year he was driving a car that was really developed around Max and was quite pointy, and he doesn't like a pointy car. So I think he's got a car now underneath him that suits his driving style a bit more, and he's able to take the fight a little bit more to Max, which is really good to see. I'm loving it. It's the first time for a while we've seen Max really challenged within the team.
He's one of the drivers who is enjoying these new regulations because of the more stable rear. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. You know, Max was always able to have it on the nose, snaps of oversteer, you can catch them, whereas most drivers really struggled with that. And, you know, Alex Albon being one of them, and you see how competitive he is this year in the Williams. So people just have different styles of driving, and I think Max is the one that's really he's got the different style to most drivers out there. But great to see Checo finding a car that suits him, and he's you know, we're seeing his true skill now.
I mean, they've ended up, I think, becoming the strongest driver pairing on the grid. You know, I'm happy to sort of eat my words in terms of prediction, because at the start of the year, I thought Mercedes, on paper, felt to me like they had the strongest driver lineup, followed by Ferrari, followed by Red Bull. But to be fair to Checo, compared to last season, he has really stepped it up. And yes, of course, the cars are suiting him a bit more, etc., etc. But he is delivering, and you know, real big credit to him for that.
Yeah, as Sergio Perez comes in, 2 laps is enough for him out there in these conditions. He's back in the garage. Top time belongs to Yuki Tsunoda right now. Quickest in the last sector as well, he has been. Then comes Sebastian Vettel, Kevin Magnussen and Lance Stroll. And the Aston looking pretty good around here. I mean, it was quick in the dry yesterday, particularly with Sebastian Vettel's hands.
It was, and Sebastian in third, and Stroll on a good lap. He's done the purple first sector. As we said, he always seems to be competitive in wet conditions.
Yeah, let's just wait and see how the session unfolds once we get the likes of Verstappen and the Ferrari setting up proper times. But as you said, Jensen, Stroll across the line to go second. It's got a yellow flag somewhere in sector 1, which is quickly clear. I presume somebody cutting across turn 1, but he's not had a lot of luck on home ground, has he, Lance? He scored points with Williams when he was here a few years ago, but his most recent visits haven't really gone to plan around his home circuit. This was the yellow flag. It was Tsunoda down into 1, locking up the inside front.
Team radio?
Front left is so easy to lock up.
Copy, Yuki.
There you go. Explained it very nicely for us.
It's very polite.
Yes. Well, there were some asterisks there at the start. We missed that bit.
I mean, they can adjust the brake bias in the car, so we can always move it rearward, but that's always a little scary in the wet as well. You don't want to be locking the rears.
You want to ride the curbs around here, don't you?
In the dry, you do.
In the dry, yes.
The wet, it's tricky. If you've got the car pointing in the right direction, sounds silly, but when you hit the curb, you're fine. But if you're slightly off angle, it can really jump you across the track or cause you to spin easily.
I'll tell you what's going to be really interesting this session is all of the secret spy photographers that the teams all hire. They'll be out in force because you're able to really see, just on those slow-mo shots, the way that the water is flowing, coming off the diffuser, the floor of the car. The spy shots, that the teams will be taking. No doubt Ferrari and the Red Bull to try and uncover a few little secrets, really, of why these two cars are performing as well as they are, and other teams up and down the pit lane will be very keen to spend this following week understanding it a bit more.
Which particular areas will they be looking at, Karun? As we look at one now, where are they going to be focusing the lenses?
It was interesting, just you can see the head-on shot actually, just where the water is coming through the floor, those tunnels, the ground effects that Jensen said. Look, underneath the car, you wouldn't have seen the way that the water is coming through those channels in the same manner last year, and most importantly out the back of the car as well. You know, what the teams will be looking for is to have the photographers in the pit lane for when the cars come back in, because you'll be able to see you know, the watermarks effectively on the carbon fiber, the diffuser, just which way the airflow is flowing, and those are the pictures that they want for the R&D teams back at base to study.
They'll be hoping that the water is dirty.
Yes.
Judging by the state of my boots yesterday and this morning, it's very dirty.
But it's also interesting to see under the cars, because, yeah, I mean, normally, that's a big snap. Normally we're seeing the side of the floor down on the ground, but you're not seeing that.
Just watching Carlos Sainz, he's gone quickest in Sector 1 so far, 27.8. 3/10 quicker than anyone else so far.
Yep, struggling to put down the power there. A lot of wheel spin, laterally loaded. Still struggling. So much torque with these cars. It's not easy to drive around here in the wet conditions.
Slightly 2/10 down on Sebastian Vettel through that middle sector. See how he finishes off this lap then. A lot of the other teams still in the garage right now. No time for either Mercedes yet, or the Williams. Perez went out for a couple of exploratory laps, but Max hasn't got in the car yet either. Quickest in the final sector and goes quickest overall.
So it works in the wet as well then, the red car.
It does. The Ferrari works in the wet as well. Does it work well enough though? This is the big question. We need to see the Red Bulls get back out and see what the conditions are like out there. Doesn't seem to be much of a dry line appearing though, Jensen, yet.
No, definitely not. But the car looks so stiff, doesn't it, over those curbs? You don't really see any suspension movement at all. No, pretty impressive lap. He's on it again. He's 4/10 up in the first sector.
That rain's not going anywhere, is it?
No, but it doesn't. It's not hard. It's a drizzle, isn't it?
Tell that to Ted.
who's sad, stood in the rain, yeah.
I had an answer for the porpoising on our bus journey in yesterday. So our bus driver has a seat that is very highly sprung, and he bounces every time. The roads here are pretty bumpy, aren't they? Very bumpy.
Yes.
And he bounces in his seat as we all get thrown out of ours.
Okay.
And I thought, there you go, there's the answer.
Yeah.
Surely.
I don't know how they're going to do that in a race car, but there has to be a way of getting some type of foam under the bum of the drivers. The only issue is that you have a height restriction, so you're limited of how high you can be in the car for safety. So, but there's always a possibility to get something under your bum, so it's a bit more comfortable.
Some bouncing there from Carlos Sainz. Still going quickest though on this lap.
Yeah, their speeds are a lot slower. They're much slower than what we saw yesterday. Obviously, we had the DRS that we could use yesterday. Today you can't. But in the wet conditions, you are going slower. Also, the car is higher off the ground.
We saw some work going on down at the Haas garage a few moments ago. Ted's down there. Got some news on Kevin Magnussen for us, Ted?
Well, Magnussen isn't in the car. He doesn't really fancy this. Actually, he's just, you know what, he is. He's just gone in. So he's sitting there, but doesn't look like he's going out. It was Mick Schumacher, Rachel, who was trying to get in his car, and then they discovered something that they needed to take the seat out for. So he was actually out again, talking to Gary Cannon, his engineer, and now they fixed whatever it was that was loose around the bottom of the cockpit, put the seat back in, and Mick is settling himself in. But you've got to say, a day like this is an opportunity for Mick Schumacher, an opportunity for mistakes, certainly, but an opportunity for good results and for points. And that's something that Haas are going to be aiming for, that relationship that he's got with Gary Gannon. Did I call him Mick Gannon earlier?
You did, yes.
Sorry, I meant Mick
That's
and
all right.
Gary Gannon. Don't know who Mick Gannon is, if anyone knows. Hello to him. But Gary Gannon is such a great engineer. I don't know if anyone ever listens to some of the radio messages during the race or after it on any of the red button channels or our digital channels. But they get on so well. He's such a sort of calm, reassuring presence for young Mick Schumacher. It's a great relationship they've got, and hopefully it will yield something today. Mick's got some very good galoshes, I think we can call them, Rach. He's been standing around, little welly boots, yes. Branded Sparko welly boots. 3 words I didn't think I was going to say today. And he's been going around the wet conditions, so he doesn't have to have wet soles of his driving boots when he gets in the car. Gents, is that really a thing? Can your feet really slip off the pedals if you've been walking around in the rain?
Well, if you've got wet feet,
yeah.
But you do have grip tape on the pedals. And also you have sides to the pedals, so your foot can't slip off left or right. But he'll be taking his shoes, those wellies off when he gets in the car, yeah.
Sparko welly boots.
Yeah, I didn't have anything fancy like that. I usually wear my trainers until I got in and then put my race boots on.
Thank you, Ted. We do see, actually, as the drivers get in, them having the bottom of their boots wiped, don't we,
yes.
so that they're dry. I mean, I don't even have any on right now. I had to take them off when I came in here because they were so soaked. I needed my socks to dry out, so I may pop down there and see if he's got a spare pair of those galoshes. For the rest of this session, which is going to continue to be very, very wet.
You know what? Yeah, I was just thinking, you're thinking about opportunities, and Ted was talking about Mick Schumacher there. I think it's a big opportunity for someone like Fernando Alonso in the Alpine. We've seen him, they've got better pace, haven't they? Baku, they're good pace in the dry, and Fernando, there's something a bit special about him in all sorts of conditions, and you do wonder if they've got a car that works reasonably well in the wet, he could be there or thereabouts. The other one is his fellow Spaniard, Carlos Sainz. He's top of the time for the moment, and he's always been very good in the wet. The first time I met Carlos was he was doing Formula 3 at Monza, and it was a soaking wet day, and he was at times 2 seconds a lap quicker than the rest of the field. He absolutely dominated it, so clearly inherited a bit of low grip car control from his father, obviously double World Rally champion. And I wonder if this is a big day for Carlos. His teammate starting at the back of the grid. He's not had the best start to the season against Leclerc. He really needs to score big. He's had quite a few DNFs already, hasn't he, this season? And to me, this is, when I think of opportunities, it's people like that, Sainz and Alonso, for me, that are sort of top of the list that could get something in these conditions.
Well, when you look at the times, Fernando's able to get the tyres working quicker than all the others. First proper flying lap was 38.3, which is quick for the first lap, so see what he can do in his second. But that's going to be key as well in qualifying. You're going to be, wanting to get those tyres working ASAP. You don't get a lot of laps in quali, and a lot of clear laps as well will be tricky to find.
Max getting in the car, he and George Russell, the last two to go out and actually experience these conditions so far today. Nicholas Latifi, first home race, because of course we haven't had one since he's been driving in Formula One.
Yeah, so not the conditions he was hoping for, I'm sure, but it definitely, it mixes it up, and it makes it, it's a chance for people that aren't in a Red Bull and a Ferrari to have a good result, and that's what we'll all be hoping for. Here comes Fernando. He's on a second quickest time, just a couple of tenths off of Sainz, and he's getting that lap in early, fourth lap, whereas Carlos took a lot more, double the time as Fernando took.
Don't forget the rules around turn 14 bollard as well. We had 3 reprimands yesterday for drivers not going to the left of the bollard when they took off the track at turn 14. Getting told off for it, and they have to come back on because they've rejoined the track in the wrong way. And it's tricky, isn't it? Because when we get to it, you'll see it. But you're pointing in the wrong direction when you come back on, aren't you? When you come off around the left of that bollard. So you don't want to do that. You want to come back on as straight as possible, but you're having to come on at an angle.
Especially in the wet.
Especially in the wet.
So, I mean, in terms of... Oh, look at that, locked up for a very long time, that inside right. So, yeah, I mean, you know, the stewards need to understand also you've got to find the safest way to get around that. It's not race conditions now, it is practice.
Very pleased Christian Horner's on the pit wall for us again through this session. Christian, how was Sergio reporting it and Max going out to feel the conditions for himself right now? Is this these sort of conditions you're expecting for qualifying, or have you seen a radar that suggests it might dry up a little?
You live in hope that it's going to improve a little, but I think it's certainly going to be wet, but maybe not quite the intensity we've had certainly in the first half of this session. So yeah, we'll see how it unfolds.
Christian Jensen. Oh, sorry. So in these conditions, it's tricky, right? Because you want to have a setup for the race, so you want your low downforce setup that seems to work so well for you guys. But you also want to get the tyres working, so it's a real compromise, downforce levels, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the main focus is on tomorrow, because that's where the points are. But you've still got to have a car that's drivable in these conditions. So it's just the drivers just having getting their eye in these conditions where the grip is and so on. So Checo feels that he's had a good look and he's reasonably comfortable. Max will go out shortly and just have a little look.
Christian, the last forecast we saw for tomorrow is that it looks like it's going to be a dry race. So how are your engineers and drivers working around the compromise between what you've got today and obviously, where the points are tomorrow?
Well, as you say, tomorrow's forecast all points towards a dry race. So generally when that's the case, you don't take too many compromises. It's not like you go for a full wet setup, with these cars. So, obviously there's bits and pieces that you can do, with the tires and pressures and bits and pieces like that. But it's mainly about, usually if you've got a balance in the dry, it tends to work, in the wet as well.
Thank you very much for the moment, Christian. This is Alex Albon out on track.
Yeah, he
right
just came on the radio and said it's pretty sketchy out there. I'm sure it'll feel a little bit better when he's got a bit of temp, but yeah, it does look very sketchy. White line for Pierre, not able to turn in. A lot less grip on those white lines, but the problem with that corner is you're looking into the apex and the car sometimes drifts to the left a little bit and you don't realise.
And then you just have to take to the grass.
Yeah.
George Russell putting in his first time lap then.
Yeah,
you flinched.
I did flinch. That was a snap. The only high-speed corner on the circuit, and snappy through that is definitely not where you want to snap.
Max Verstappen has also come out finally on track, guys, as we get in the last half hour of this session. We've got a Spanish 1-2 here, only a tenth and 2 tenths between them, and second and a half ahead of Pierre Gasly in third. So they've clearly managed to fire up the tyres in a way that other people haven't. As Jensen said before, Alonso was able to get out there and get on it much quicker than most other people. You look at Russell's time, and
2 seconds down, isn't he, in that first sector?
Well, first 2 sectors, yeah, he's 2.7. And to be honest, if he does a 38 something on the first lap, we saw Fernando do a 38.2, I believe. That's sort of where the ballpark is. But what I was trying to say was, it just shows that, for people at home to understand, when we're talking about firing other tires, we got a great shot of the airflow coming off that Mercedes there with the water. This is what we're saying. It takes 2-3 laps to get any temperature into these tires. So just because Russell's, well, look at him now in the 139s for that first lap, you'll see huge gains. You'll find seconds in the opening 5 laps of this run.
It's interesting to see with Max, he's got sparks coming off the floor. They're still running the car very low to be having sparks down the straight on the wet track.
Really mixed up at the top of the times here. With Carlos, as you said, the 2 Spaniards, Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso, then an AlphaTauri, then an Alfa Romeo, then an Aston Martin, then an Alpine. Or the second Alpine, I should say, both Alpines in the top 6 around here. McLaren's, we're waiting to see some proper laps from Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris, or maybe they just don't really fancy it at the moment, hoping for it to dry up a little bit before they go back out.
I think we'll see most people out in the last 10 minutes because it's the closest point to qualifying. We're a very busy track. A lot of spray. You're actually not going to get a lot done, but that's when they're probably going to all go out.
But they all want to, don't they? Because then hopefully you will get a bit of a dry line. The more cars that are on track, the more chance you've got.
Yeah, exactly. It's looking very snappy for Max out there. Rears aren't working. Turn 2 had a big oversteer moment on the way in. And it doesn't seem to be getting any better quite yet.
His first sector was 29.9. Like you were saying, Karun, I mean, this first lap, yes, they will be down, and then see what they can improve to.
But it's fascinating to see the different approaches. Max out there straight away, trying to attack on this first lap. There's no, in contrast, some of the others who sort of found their way around and tried to ease themselves into a run. He's straight on it, attacking, trying to attack the entry. The grip's not there, of course, because the tyre temperature's not there. And as Jensen mentioned, turn 2, but even there at 8-9, he was straight over the curb across the left-hand apex of turn 9. But that's just Max Verstappen, isn't it? he doesn't hang about. Straight in the pits, actually, at the end of this lap. So, much like Perez, as Christian was saying before, just going to have a little look and then park up and probably wait for the last 10 minutes and see what conditions are like then.
Yeah, it's. I think the two interesting ones for me is Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon. Driving the same car, very close in dry conditions, but Fernando's style is just really helping him out there, get those tyres working. He's 1.3 seconds quicker, and he's only done 4 laps, and Esteban's been out there for 8.
What is it about his style then?
He's, I don't know, but as I was saying yesterday, it's, if all the cars were looked the same colours, and all the helmets were the same colour, the only person I would be able to pick out in terms of driving style is Fernando Alonso. He just has a different style. He's a real fighter, and you can see that in the way he drives, and I think he's just working the tyres a little bit harder and getting the temp in them.
It goes back to the Michelin era, isn't it, Jensen? Remember that? It was extraordinary to watch his driving style, particularly in contrast to you, actually, when you guys had were both on Michelin tyres, and you'd see Fernando in this extremely unorthodox way just chuck the steering wheel into this corner.
Yeah, it was not pretty, was it?
No, he just like bully the front end of the car and say, "You will turn now," as opposed to.
I tell you the reason why he did that is because the initial part of the steering, they had so much front end, and it really unsettled the rear. So he used to throw the steering on to go past that point of the steering, so he could put a little bit of understeer in the car, and the rear then was stable. And that's the reason why he did it with those Michelin tyres back then.
Yeah, but you're absolutely right. You watch the aggression, the energy he puts into the tyres. I think that pays dividends, right, in these conditions. He's able to put heat and energy into the tyres and fire them up in a way that other drivers can't. Yet he's got this tremendous feel to make sure that in the dry, when we often talk about tyre wear and tyre degradation, he doesn't take more out of the tyres than other people. And that's the brilliance of his style of driving, I think. And he sort of honed this skill and this balancing act over the last 20-odd years in the sport.
Yeah, he adapts very well, better than most.
And also, sorry, go on.
When you watch Monaco.
Yes.
He definitely knew how to look after the tyres in Monaco. He knows his surroundings. He knows what's going on around him. Probably the best out of anyone. And I think he probably learned a lot of that from Michael Schumacher.
He was one George Russell mentioned us yesterday, actually. Just said, thinks the Alpines have some pace around here this weekend.
Vettel goes to the top.
The Mercedes, he does, indeed. And the Aston, they were good in the dry as well yesterday, actually, Karun, weren't they? So
yep.
Perhaps it could be a good track for them this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we were talking about it yesterday during free practice. For those of you who joined our coverage, you know, I think Baku was the first weekend they felt like they started to unlock some of their potential. You know, their engineers were on the flight with us going back to the UK, and they came away from the weekend, despite the fact that they thought they should have had more points on the board. Sebastian ended up down the escape road at one point and lost a bunch of time. But they feel like they're starting to understand this heavily revised car that they introduced in Barcelona. Lance Stroll on a personal best lap as well, first 2 sectors. So let's see what this does for him gingerly through the chicane. He's not really attacking those curves in the same way we saw Sebastian do earlier, and I'm sure his engineers will be keeping an eye on that and giving him a bit of feedback. He goes 5th fastest, nearly 9/10 down. Vettel, meanwhile, is going even quicker on this lap, guys, down to the hairpin.
He is indeed, yeah. Fastest middle sector so far for him. See how he finishes this lap, Jensen.
Yeah, he's looking strong, isn't he? But the Mercedes are actually looking reasonably competitive. 4th and 7th for George and Lewis. Lewis had a bit of a moment as we watched him start a lap. But here we are with Sebastian. He's a lot more aggressive on the curbs, isn't he? He's got confidence in that car to throw it over the curbs. Very, very different to his teammate, who was very gingerly through that last sector. He's a little bit down on his time. Lost 3/10 in the last sector. But yeah, he's looking strong if qualifying's like this.
Let's go and join Ted in the pit lane. Ted.
As both Mercedes are just coming back to the garage. So for them, and actually for everybody, it's just understanding which tyre is going to be the best at which moment. So we saw, didn't we, in Monaco, you start with a full wet, wait for it to wear down. Is that the best time that's going to work around here? Is it better to have a fresh set of intermediates? I haven't seen anyone pass me with the green-walled intermediate tyres on. Have you seen anyone on your app?
We've actually got Carlos and Fernando now out on inters, I believe.
Okay, yeah, so that's what all this is about now, is understanding what it's going to mean with the wear of the full wets, or with the tyre temperature of the intermediates, what's going to be best for what kind of conditions. Alex Albon at Williams was actually strangely saying that the car has got worse as the tyres warm up, when he was expecting it to get quicker and better. He's been losing grip, and he thinks that's potentially because it's raining a little bit harder wherever he was reporting from on track. I must say it's the same kind of rain as when I last told you, Rach. Nothing's really changed. It's just, properly raining, but not any worse, or rather any better than it was before. So, let's see what the Alpine can do on this lap.
That could be tyre pressure related, Ted, couldn't it, with Alex Albon? Because we've got this balancing act of pressure and temperature, and often, if on a run on the wet tyres, when you expected the temperature to come up and build up, but the grip goes away, it sometimes means that your tyre pressure targets aren't quite right, and the tyre basically sort of balloons up, and you lose some of that contact patch.
Definitely, could be lots of things. There could be the wind as well. The wind has picked up. That's one thing that has changed in the last sort of 5-10 minutes or something. It's now very, very breezy. As Sebastian Vettel in his environmental protest against Canada's tar sands helmet goes past me on the intermediate tyres and looks quite quick going into turn 1. It is very blowy around here, so some drivers might be reporting less grip because of that as well. Let's follow Seb's. I'm sure you'll pick up Seb's lap after his out lap.
Thanks, Ted. We're on with Fernando at the moment. He's out on track. He's on those intermediate tyres, as you mentioned, though, but as you can see, not improving on his times so far anyway on this first lap, or exploratory lap perhaps. But at the moment, Sebastian Vettel is fastest so far with a 1:35.821. Then comes Carlos Sainz and Fernando Alonso, followed by Yuki Tsunoda in the AlphaTauri, and the other Aston Martin of Lance Stroll. So what do you think? Anyone else going to venture out on the intermediates, Jensen?
Well, they'll all be watching Fernando.
But I mean, it's not a great time, so
I think he's probably the wrong person to watch, though, because as I said before, he's very aggressive. You see him all the way out of turn 2 on his first time lap. From turn 2 to turn 3, he had snaps of oversteer all the way. So he's struggling to get them working. That does look like there's a lot of spray out there. So if he can't get them working, I don't think anyone can.
What's under those tyre blankets then? Are we betting on an intermediate? Thanks for that.
Wheels.
Thanks for that. Thanks a lot, Jensen. I'm so glad you're here.
I will say, Alonso now, the tyres are starting to wake up a bit. He's gone personal best in the first sector. So to be fair to him, I don't think he was never going to go out there and do it straight away. It's probably, takes a lap or two. And now his middle sector at the moment, I can see here at race control, it does look like a car that's a bit more underneath him, and in fact faster than anybody in the middle sector. So the intermediates do look like the one to be on. Carlos Sainz as well, coming up to the line.
Wets for Max.
Yes, the Red Bull sticking to the wet. So let's see what Sainz can do here, squirming his way out of the final chicane and up to the line.
Well, Kevin's just done a 27.4 in the first sector, Kevin Magnussen, which has gone purple, and he's on the wet tyre. So it's a definite crossover period, isn't it?
Yeah, it does seem that way. Fernando's about to come across the line. That should go to the top there, 34.8. So that's a pretty big jump for him. 1.2 seconds from what he'd done before. Sainz has a little bit of a snap there coming through the kink of 5, and it has improved, in fact, on Alonso's time. So you're right, Jensen. This is the crossover point. But if we think that the rain isn't going to intensify, then if this was qualifying, you'd want to be at the intermediates, wouldn't you? To keep running towards the end of the session.
Yeah. And as they all start to come out of the garage now, you definitely want to put them on, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. I think Kevin's going to do he's probably going to go P2, Kevin Magnussen on the wet tyre. So it's a very good lap. But Fernando in the first sector, 27.1 purple. So he's getting them switched on, and now we can see what Carlos can do. Green in the middle sector, so he's improving as well, but it does not look as comfortable in the Ferrari as it does in the Alpine.
Yeah, this is what I was saying before. I'm very excited to see what Fernando Alonso can do in qualifying later on, because there's opportunity here for him. You go back to those days with the Renault, they weren't quite the best car on certain occasions, and he would exploit every opportunity. You see Sainz coming through the spray. he's going to improve, but watch Alonso's time now as Fernando comes up into the chicane. If he gets a good run through here, uses a bit of curb, a little bit of spray in front of him, but this should comfortably take him up into the low 34s.
And it does indeed, yeah. 134.2 for Fernando Alonso on those intermediate tyres. Lance Stroll was on the wets for his lap. Carlos Sainz and Kevin Magnussen making up the top 4. As you can see there, Carlos still on the intermediates, had that squirrely moment there as well. Not, as you say, Jensen, not looking as happy as the Alpine at all.
It looks very snappy. With the Alpine, I don't know if it's throttle application or short shifting or what, or the car's just working better. But it seems much better than the Ferrari right now. Max, he's had a lot of oversteers through that section, didn't he, on his first run as well? And the same thing again. Rear seems very light.
It's turn 9 again. Just explain to me again why turn 9 is the one that's catching most of them out.
It's a tricky corner because you have the bridge, so underneath the bridge it will be much drier. So you got very different feeling with the car because you first hit the brakes and there's very low grip, then you get loads of grip, and then you lose all that grip again when you go onto the wet. So it's very difficult to balance the car there, and the Red Bull seems to be pretty tricky there.
Carlos Sainz is on a decent lap on his intermediates. We'll see where he finishes that one as Max comes back into the pits.
He's still 7/10 off in the middle sector, Carlos, from Fernando. But as we saw Fernando's quickest lap, he lost a lot of time in the last sector.
Yeah.
And that's the thing on the Inter. It probably is quicker, but it's just on edge the whole time. And he got a bit squirrely through the hairpin entry on exit and the last couple of corners as well, the chicane. You could hear him short shifting on the way to the straight with massive amounts of wheel spin.
Watch Sebastian Vettel on this lap, guys, because he's also now on a set of intermediate tyres, and he's done a pretty good first sector, a couple of tenths away from what we saw from Alonso. Here's Max under that bridge. As Jensen said, you go from the bit of dry bit into the wet on the outside, but just went in a bit too hot. It's not a comfortable ride when you go, we'll see it here, watch that orange sausage curb, and it's going to go right underneath the belly of the car, and you'll feel that shock through your spine because that's, you know, it's literally thin bits of carbon and a bit of floor between where your bottom is and that curb. As Vettel's gone fastest of anybody in the middle sector. Here he is in that final chicane. Are we going to see a bit of Sebastian Vettel wet weather magic? I'm thinking Monza 2008, Shanghai 2009. Jensen, you remember that race, a very wet one there. And yeah, maybe this is a day for a bit of Vettel wet magic.
Exactly, the old boys. The old boys are back.
I love it.
The double world champion and the 4-time world champion going at it for pole position. That would be great, wouldn't it?
Go find your race kit, JB. It's got to be a C.
Oh, I would love to right now.
You never lose it. This is what it's telling you. You never lose it.
Yeah.
You're not convinced, are you? Charles not going out. Just to remind you, he'll start from the back of the grid for the race tomorrow because they've taken all those extra units, new power units, and control electronics and various other bits and pieces, which means he will start right at the back. Pierre Gasly we're on board with now. Signed till 2023 with AlphaTauri.
Pierre Gasly into turn 1. Locking up the front inside, taking a cut, as he should. It's just the safest option. I remember back in the day when there was gravel and grass there that you'd run over, but it's a lot nicer for the drivers now. So yeah, for Charles Leclerc, it's actually nice because he's not going to have to run in qualifying either, so he doesn't have to risk anything.
He could pop home, couldn't he, really?
Exactly, and ready for tomorrow.
So Max Verstappen's gone back in to the garage after this lap, and this was the turn 9 you were mentioning much earlier on, JB, as well, about how tricky it is, and not happy.
No, it's funny, they've just, he's not really doing many laps though. I think he needs to do more laps to get heat in the tyres. I mean, I love the way that I'm commenting on them, but it's Sebastian Vettel, he's been on it, hasn't he, on the wet tyres, on the inter tyres. And this was a lovely lap. He's got a lot of confidence in that car. He was quick yesterday in the dry, but not this quick. It's definitely helped them, the wet conditions.
Yeah, gone quickest overall ahead of Fernando Alonso. We thought Fernando's lap was good. So putting in some really decent showing. And the Alpine and Aston that actually both were commented on yesterday how good they were running in the dry, as you say. So Daniel Ricciardo's out again in the McLaren right now, improving on his own times, but not looking like he's going to trouble Sebastian Vettel at the top of the times there.
Fernando to P1.
Oh, this is great. Can we just have these two doing this all the way through to the end of this session?
Ricciardo
33.836 for Alonso, 33.891 for Vettel. Very, very close. Just over half a tenth.
And a big gap, guys, to P3, isn't it? Sainz 9/10 away, although Carlos, I think he had a bit of a mistake in the last sector. He lost a whole heap of time. Ricciardo's just been pipped by George Russell in the Mercedes, so...
He's on the wets as well, Corinne. That's the quickest time in the wets.
Yes, that's right, but it's super mixed up. He's probably, I think, the only car left on the wets at the moment, isn't he? So he's,
him and Lewis, yeah.
Yeah, so it's still... I think... Just looking at the tracks there, you can see sort of train tracks where this high camera positions. That, to me, indicates, as I said before, if you were in qualifying, the intermediate tire, I think, is the one to have. When you've got 20 cars running around the circuit, Formula One cars are unbelievable hoovers when it comes to just sucking up the water off the ground. And in Q1, you're going to have all 20 cars going around the circuit in these conditions. So therefore... I'm a little bit surprised. All that to say, I'm a bit surprised by what Mercedes are doing, because to me, you want to use this phase to kind of understand what you're going to have for qualifying, and I think the intermediate is the one you'd want.
That is a Haas that has ended its session. Kevin Magnussen off there at turn 2. Sure, we'll have a look at a second.
Everything looks okay.
It does, doesn't it? Just looking to see if there's any damage there, but he's just...
Oh, it looks like he's gone really deep at turn 1 and gone straight across the track, which would be unusual because you normally get it slowed down way before that.
That's a really... Yeah, I was going to say, I wonder if he's had a spin coming through. Ooh, keep an eye on that. I wonder if he's had a spin through 2 that sent him that way, because it's a very odd spot to be parked at. I'm sure we'll get a replay in a minute.
Just on it, you were talking about the Mercedes, the only ones out on the wet. So is Mick Schumacher, and Charles has stuck a set of wets. No, he's in the pits, actually. But Mick Schumacher's the only other one on wets.
So George is 6/10 off now. George Russell is 6/10 off the quickest time in P3 on the wet tyre.
That's improvements. That's good signs.
Surprising.
Ted, you've got something for us. So is it on Daniel Ricciardo?
Yes, very quickly, just before you get the replay. Actually, that's worked really well for... concerned looks. It's worked very well for Daniel Ricciardo. P5 at the moment. Lando Norris, here you go. Rach, let's do the replay.
Yes, let's have a look at what happened to Kevin. Just straight across.
But he just sort of turned the wrong way.
Well, he just couldn't get it stopped, could he? He did the right thing, to be fair. But it just wouldn't slow down.
Oh, what happened there?
Maybe he had a... Maybe didn't have...
Wow, that was very odd. Maybe some sort of brake issue as George Russell got away with it. I wonder if he had some sort of braking issue that meant he just didn't get the retardation he wanted. As I think Carlos Sainz, where's he off to? Up the runoff area at 3. Hopefully a spin turn. And now you can see the spray.
Look at that spray. The visibility is terrible. There are rules, Corinne, aren't there, about reversing back onto the track, though? We saw him back on and Lewis going through.
Yeah, I remember we had that incident, didn't we? Was it Ricciardo and Kvyat at Baku a few years ago? Was it Kvyat? One reversed into the other at turn 3? And then after that, it was all clarified, wasn't it? The rules about reversing and rejoin the circuit. But anyway, let's take a look. This is Lewis on, doesn't look like on a particularly quick lap, so I'm not sure what this is going to tell us, but what we want to see is actually...
He has put the intermediates on now.
Yeah, but Checo Perez behind, he's done a couple of laps so far on the intermediates, but still not able to fire them up. So it's really jumbled up, the order. We've got, at the moment, is there 5 teams in the top... 5 different teams in the top 6?
6 in the top 6.
6 in the top 6, yeah.
Isn't it?
Yes, you're right. 6 in the top 6. Yeah. Well, no.
7 in the top 7.
7 in the top 7. Joe Guan Yu going up there to P6. That's
and
no Red Bulls, by the way. Just to finish up, 7 in the top 7 and no Red Bulls.
This is not the right tyre for us.
Also, though, I wanted to ask you, was this then...
I'm going to crash in every corner almost.
Nicholas
Latifi's radio there, yeah.
Yeah, he's on the intermediate. You can see them pushing it back in. He's clearly not happy with the intermediate. So, Ted, I don't know if, you know, there's more rain that's come down. We're definitely seeing more spray and more drivers struggling for grip on the intermediates, which would indicate that there's more water on the track than there was probably even 10 minutes ago. Oh, Verstappen.
We've got Max off on the grass as well.
Yes, Karun, to answer your question, a little bit more. Not much, but a little bit more. Intensity 4, Rachel, intensity 4.
Thank you very much, Ted. But we've got a similar situation that Kevin had. This is down at turn 2 again. And there's a Mercedes going past as he comes back onto the track. Yes, is there... You think it's intensity 4, Ted? And also, I just wanted to ask Karun whether or not this is... You know, we know it's dry tomorrow. Are people making compromises here?
Well, we heard Christian saying that earlier, didn't he? That, you know, they all tend to stick pretty much with their dry setup because that's where the points are paid, as we see Verstappen. Oh, he caught that puddle, I think, on the right-hand side. There's a little bit of standing water just near the curb, and that we'll see it here from this high shot. Watch as he turns in, and just there's a little bit of standing water, and he just snapped him round. Very lucky to get away from without touching the barrier, and a spin turn to get back on track. So it is a compromise race in terms of the drivers are compromised today, I think. Charles Leclerc's car on the high stands, he's not going anywhere, as the graphic says. To remind everyone at home, he'll be starting the race at the back of the grid after taking several new power unit components, and he's going to be doing some big overtaking on Sunday. I'm very excited to see how far he can get up the pack. Ferrari should have the pace to get him into the top 4, and Canada's a race where you got high risk of safety cars, red flags, lots of things can happen. So they've just got to read the race right and try and cycle him up the order.
Been a tough week for Charles. Missed his flight on Monday to Montreal in the first place. He's watched Max win more races from Charles' poles than Charles has won from Charles' poles. And now starting at the back of the grid. But as you say, take the hit here and see how far he can get up the grid.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the better places to be starting at the back.
Ferrari, by the way, have taken a new ICE for Carlos Sainz as well this weekend. He won't get a penalty, but they've also cycled through a new engine for him. And I wonder if that's a little bit of a reaction to the ICE that went pop for Charles in Baku in a fairly spectacular manner.
15 cars out on track now, all trying to make the most of these very final seconds of running, and radar or forecast suggesting we could be having something similar for qualifying in a couple of hours' time. Good session though, isn't it, for Alpine?
Yeah, it is.
They'll take that.
First and third, but you look at the conditions now, it's consistent because there's cars running. But if the cars weren't running, there would be a lot more water on the track than what we saw sort of 40 minutes ago. So the rain is coming down, and I think that's why the wet tyres are still reasonably competitive compared to the Inters.
Esteban Ocon's gone even faster in Sector 1, 26.7 for him. Alpine really seems to be switching on in these conditions. 11 degrees track temperature right now. Air temperature, I should say, just 16 degrees track temperature. It is cold out there.
I've just pulled up the weather radar, guys, up in race control. And I would be looking for shelter if I was the two of you out in the paddock. It's that rain cloud has just got, the circle has gotten even wider than it was at the start of the session, and I think it's pretty conclusive that we are going to have a very cold and wet qualifying ahead.
Jensen, do you want to make me an offer for my umbrella?
Yeah, I might need to.
Cash. As the checkered flag falls, Esteban Ocon still going well. Let's see how he finishes this lap off. Still third fastest, lost some time there in Sector 3. It's his teammate Fernando Alonso leading the times right now. I mean, listen, it is going very well in these wet conditions. It's when it's dry tomorrow in the race. As far up as they can start, if they qualify well, around here, where would you expect them to finish in that Alpine this weekend?
Well, starting position is a big deal. If they can start near the front, I'm sure they don't think they'll be challenging the Ferrari that maybe will be starting in the front. Who knows? It's going to be such a mixed-up qualifying. But of Carlos Sainz and the two Red Bulls, they should be quicker. on paper, but grid position is really important wherever we're racing in Formula One. So they're going to be pushing hard, and also it's just lovely for them both to be fighting near the front. You know, Fernando's going to give it his all. I'm sure Esteban will too.
Good news, though, is that everyone's kept it out of the barriers, even with those spins today. So a good, clean session from all. Lots learned during that, and they're going to have to take it in, as you said, into qualifying this afternoon in these conditions, Karun, which should make for a very exciting qualifying for us, because that is a mixed-up order, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. You know, way qualifying's, we've seen it before. I mean, we were talking about Monza 2008. Remember when Vettel was on pole for, at that time, Toro Rosso, wasn't it, in that race? And we see these Stroll you mentioned in Turkey from a couple of years ago, taking pole position there. Where qualifying throw up all sorts of things. But if you ask me to pick I'd have to say Fernando Alonso, not only because he's at the top of the times now, but I go back to I don't know, 45 minutes ago when I thought Fernando Alonso would be pretty special in these conditions, and I'm really excited to see what he can deliver in a couple of hours' time.
Okay, you're going to put your money on Fernando Alonso for pole this afternoon.
Yeah, I think there's 50p in my pocket at the moment, so yeah, I'll do that.
Not bad for an old guy, is he, Jensen?
He's doing all right, he's doing all right, but it's so close. Top three covered by less than a tenth, and